Well, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to Village Hall. It is my privilege to call this meeting to order. Happy summer to everyone, given how long we waited for it. It's nice that it's finally here. If you haven't already done so, there are copies of our agenda on either side of the room. You can pick one up and follow along with our proceedings tonight. There will be multiple opportunities for public comment, both with respect to items that are on tonight's agenda, as well as a segment of our meeting that is reserved for public comments of a general nature. That's item 4. At that point in time, if there are any questions or comments of a general nature with respect to things that are not on tonight's agenda, at that point we would ask you to please come to the podium, tell us who you are, and we welcome hearing from you. There will be opportunities for public comment as well with respect to items that are on our agenda tonight. It is our proud custom to begin our meetings by reciting the Pledge of Allegiance. So at this point I would like to ask everyone present to please rise and join us in reciting the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you very much for joining us on that. I'd now like to ask our fine village clerk, April Holden, to please call the roll.
Commissioner Waldeck.
Here.
Commissioner White.
Here.
Commissioner Vitamo.
Here.
Commissioner Jose.
Here.
Commissioner Olson.
Here.
Commissioner Barnett.
Here.
Mayor Tully.
Here. You almost threw me with that one. Thank you. That brings us to item 3, minutes of prior council meetings. We have one set of minutes to review and approve tonight. Are there any changes, comments, corrections to the minutes from our June 14th, 2016 regular village council meeting?
Mayor Tully, I move to approve the June 14th, 2016 minutes as presented.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? None are opposed. Those minutes are approved. And just like that, we are at item 4, which is reserved for public comments of a general nature with respect to things that are not on tonight's agenda. If any members of the audience have any questions or comments for the village council at this point in time with respect to things not on tonight's agenda, please come down to the podium, tell us who you are, and we would welcome hearing from you. Please. Good evening.
Hi. I have some handouts here that I'd like to pass on to the council, and you can keep track of what I'm talking about.
May I ask you to introduce yourself?
Okay, my name is Lori Abrant, and I live at 937 Clyde Avenue in Downers Grove here. And I've come tonight to ask the village council to help us make some modifications to things. We've asked the Public Works Department to make modifications to a stormwater drainage ditch that was dug in front of our house in the summer of 2015. I don't know if you remember last summer, some funds were allocated to do roadway reconstruction in our subdivision, and they also reconfigured the storm drainage ditches, which some of us were surprised at because we've never had a standing water issue there and a drainage issue. This ditch that they dug on our property appears unusually deep, and the engineer stated that it was necessary to do a 4-to-1 ratio slope, and to us it seems extremely deep. I should also mention that we were given the option of having a bioswale or just a plain sod ditch, and we decided to go along with the bioswale in the interest of ecology, and we thought it would be nice to have native plants in the area. So since the beginning of 2016, we've been asking to get some modifications approved and completed to this ditch. We've traded numerous emails with various Public Works Department engineers, and one engineer told us that we could run an extension out from the culvert and then cover it and make the ditch a bit shallower. And then we requested guidelines for any modifications that were going to be done, just so that we knew, we would be aware of what was, happening and what the requirements were, and so we could better understand the situation. So the Assistant Director of Public Works and Engineering and the engineering manager came out and they looked at the ditch and they talked with us extensively. But they were hesitant to agree to any modifications other than the 4-to-1 slope, which they themselves stated that they thought was non-standard, even according to the engineering plans that were drawn up for all this modification. So recently, we were told by the development engineer that they're waiting for the contractor to come out and confirm the ditches that were installed to the correct slope. And if they are installed to the correct slope, they'll go ahead and just put in the bioswale. If they're not, if they're deemed too steep, they'll modify it. But we haven't heard from them since, so we are at a loss as to what's happening or what will be the outcome. So we would like to get these modifications approved and done before the plants go in the ground, and we were told that they were going to try and finish it off in June sometime. So, but we haven't heard anything from them about that either. So, my husband and I believe that this ditch poses a safety hazard because of its steepness and its deepness. Passengers cannot park on the shoulder of the road and exit the cars because they'll break an ankle if they go down into this ditch. We cannot mow the ditch. It is currently planted with some kind of grass to prevent soil erosion over the winter and the spring rains. We can't take care of this because it's too steep. Can't get in there. And I'm afraid that in the wintertime with icy conditions, we have, people on the other side of the road from us, and if their driveways are slippery and they start going across the road, they're going to wind up in the ditch. And the only way to retrieve the car is by having it towed. So my husband and I noticed that during the construction in our neighborhood last summer, various neighbors were aware of the deepness of their ditches and were concerned about safety because of children in the neighborhood and such, and being able to park and exit cars. So they asked for modifications, and they got them. Our next door neighbor and the one across the street asked for modifications, and you'll see in the photos, the very bottom photo, two photos. The one neighbor is directly to the east of us, and his ditch is very maintainable. He hardly has a ditch from the photo. And the one across the street, also, theirs was modified, and it's very easy to mow and take care of, and then they had a storm drain put in. So both of those are easy to maintain, and it also makes the house look much nicer, to be truthful. In its present state, our storm ditch is significantly different in the level between our neighbors directly next door to us and the one across the street. In fact, my husband and I have taken a walk around the entire subdivision, and we've noticed that ours is the deepest in the entire subdivision. And so we're just wondering why, and we'd like it modified so that we can maintain it. So we're asking the Village Council to recommend that Public Works Department approves the modifications that we want. We would like to see the depth decreased by installing the culvert extension that was recommended by one of the engineers, and then covering that extension over with soil to maybe a depth of 1 foot or 1.5 feet, so that it raises the final depth of the ditch. And that would certainly help in maintaining it, being able to get a mower in there and get down in there and weed and stuff. Because we were told that the first year the village would take care of the bioswale and keep it clean and keep the weeds out and water it, and the second year and after that it was up to the resident of the property to maintain the bioswale, which is fine with us, but we just want to be able to get in there without injuring ourselves. So that's about all I have to say about it. And did you want a copy of this, or?
Sure, if you wouldn't mind handing it to Mr. Baker, who's just to
Okay.
your left there, then he'll make sure that it's made part of the record and available for all village council members to see it. Thank you
Okay.
for coming down and
Okay.
sharing those issues to us. Obviously, you've now brought them not only to our attention, but all village staff who actually handles the day-to-day issues throughout the community. And I'm sure that this will serve as a request to get back to you in terms of what the status is.
Yes, please.
Next steps, what options might exist, and what may or may not be doable given the conditions in the field. So
Okay.
thank you for coming down here and sharing that with us.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments from members of the audience with respect to matters of a general nature with respect to things not on tonight's agenda? All right, terrific. Well, thank you. Item 5, our consent agenda. Do I have a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented?
Mayor Tully, I move to approve the consent agenda as presented.
Second.
Any questions or comments from any members of the audience on any of the items on tonight's consent agenda? Questions or comments from members of the village council? Hearing none, may I have a roll call, please?
Commissioner Olson?
Aye.
Commissioner White?
Aye.
Commissioner Waldeck?
Aye.
Commissioner Fatimo?
Aye.
Commissioner Jose?
Aye.
Commissioner Barnett?
Aye.
Mayor Tully?
Aye. Consent agenda passes unanimously. That brings us to our active agenda, and we have 3 items on tonight's active agenda. First, with respect to item 6A as an apple, do I have a motion to adopt a resolution approving the preliminary plat of subdivision with an exception for 5527, 5531 Fairmount Avenue?
Mayor Tully, I move to adopt a resolution approving the preliminary plat of subdivision with exceptions for 5527 through 5531 Fairmount Avenue as presented.
Second.
Thank you. Any questions or comments from members of the audience? Questions or comments from members of the village council? Hearing none, roll call, please.
Commissioner Olson?
Aye.
Commissioner White?
Aye.
Commissioner Waldeck?
Aye.
Commissioner Fatimo?
Aye.
Commissioner Jose?
Aye.
Commissioner Barnett?
Aye.
Mayor Tully?
Aye, that matter passes unanimously and brings us to item 6B as in boy. Do I have a motion to adopt an ordinance amending traffic provisions at the intersection of Lacey and Esplanade Roads?
Mayor Tully, I move that we adopt an ordinance amending traffic provisions at the intersection of Lacey and Esplanade as presented.
Second.
Questions or comments from members of the audience? Good evening, welcome.
Good evening, Mayor Tully and Commissioners. My name is Bill Robles, 7800 Queens Court, Downers Grove, Illinois. I'm currently in my second term as a Transportation and Parking Commission Commissioner. And I would respectfully ask that you table this motion or this resolution, because I find it coming before the dais at this time. I watched the discussion on TV last week, and I noticed in the absence of any traffic, transportation, and parking commission meetings, this was never workshopped in the proper manner. Now, I don't know if it's IDOT has better privileges than the citizens of the village of Downers Grove, or does Esplanade have privileges that are not offered to the village residents? But I think it's highly out of order that this motion and this resolution is before you now without having been workshopped. We have suspended commission meetings because of personnel problems, and Nan Noonan has not called any meetings in the absence of the traffic manager. When I heard the workshop on TV last week, I was taken by the fact that none of you, except for David, mentioned that he thought that 4-way stop signs would be counterproductive. I have been championing traffic calming and safety for years. I started back in 2005. And one of the things I've learned when researching traffic calming, that there's intersection issues all over the place. And if I'd like to quote something to you from the commission, I have a report that I excerpted about a traffic calming, and it addresses the issue of Esplanade at Finley and Esplanade. When Greg Beneloff was the Economic Development Commissioner or Manager Director, we discussed this issue because this is not a new issue. It's been going on for 10 years. When the traffic comes out of the parking garage at Finley, it's always an issue, day, in the morning, at night. And someone said, well, let's put a traffic cop up there. Yeah, it costs money. Esplanade doesn't want to do it. Neither does the village. The village and the state of Illinois doesn't want to put a traffic light up there. In the report, it says it's $250,000 for a traffic signal. My research and the information I have says that in a busy intersection like that, four-way stop sign is the most hazardous alternative because people assume that the other people are going to stop. They assume that other people are going to stop. I would like to just quote something here from an article about roundabouts. Traffic congestion and motor vehicle crashes are widespread problems, especially in urban areas. Roundabouts used in place of stop signs and traffic signals are a type of circular intersection that can significantly improve traffic flow and safety. Where roundabouts have been installed, motor vehicle crashes have declined by about 40%, and those involving injuries have been reduced by about 80%. Crash reductions are accompanied by significant improvements in traffic flow, thus reducing vehicle delays, fuel consumption, and air pollution. We have a problem at Esplanade and Finley. It's not only the intersection, it's the traffic flow. Those people back up into the garage. They can't get out of the garage because, have you ever been to a traffic signal that's not operating? Where you have a low traffic street and a high traffic street? The big line continues to be the big line because there's as much right away for the guy who has 2 cars on each direction than the people who have 100 cars waiting to come out. The solution, if you haven't got any money, is to have a roundabout or a traffic circle. Cost pennies. In any case, that's what I'm asking you to, is to table this and put this before the Traffic Commission so that they can workshop it and make a recommendation. Because, as I heard it last week, the recommendation was come from staff. And staff is to be supported by a citizens commission. Unless I'm out of order, I think this procedure should not be preempted because it's the state of Illinois and Esplanade. The Traffic Commission, as of late, has become somewhat of a sleeping entity. It's supposed to be there to complement the commission or the council, and it has been doing anything but. The Traffic Commission, Transportation and Parking Commission doesn't get applications like it used to. It was a major change in how the council and the staff addressed the Transportation and Parking Commission when we had the hiatus on things because of budgetary restraints. And it was decided that traffic situations and speed control would be combined with the redevelopment of streets and putting major construction. Unless you had major construction on your street, never got to the Traffic Commission, Transportation Commission anymore. So I questioned this earlier this year, why we're not getting these things in front of us anymore. Why citizens aren't offering their comments and their requests to the Transportation and Parking Commission. I personally feel that a lot of this is being, how would you call it, usurped or tabled by the Public Works. There's been a definite change in the attitude in Public Works. Now, if you have a commission that has no function, maybe it's time to dissolve it. That's my personal comment.
Thank you, Mr. Roble. And
But I wanted to say, definitely, the next commission meeting, as you talked about at the last meeting, I should say last week, is scheduled for July. It's usually second Wednesday in July. I would think this would be prudent to table this till that time.
Well, a few things. First of all, thank you for your comments. Just a few things. Number one, and someone will no doubt correct me if I'm wrong, but we have some boards and commissions that are statutorily created and we have to go through certain processes. There are other boards that serve at the direction and the pleasure of the village council, and either as a practice or policy, sometimes things will go through them, sometimes they won't. I can think of a handful of other boards where it's the same thing. The Liquor Commission is one of them, for example. We don't have to put things to the Liquor Commission. The Liquor Commissioner can make that decision directly. But we've had a practice of running things by the Liquor Commission, but we don't always do that. And if someone corrects me if I'm wrong, this is one of those cases where it was just determined that because of the circumstance in which the situation arose, the fact that the traffic environment was tested, and we actually have some experience in the field as to how this would operate before it came to the council, that was part of the reason why it was workshopped, if I'm correct, and I'm sure the village manager can weigh in on that a little bit, and then I've got a couple other points.
Yeah, Mayor, you're absolutely correct, and in addition to that, it's been many, many years since TAP, Transportation and Parking Commission, has been reviewing specifically warrants for proposed stop signs, and since that is the heart of the issue, is whether or not it's is warranted at this location, we just kept with our many-year practice of bringing that issue directly to the council.
Right. And I think it's important because here, it's not as though that there wasn't any citizen input on the issue. It was, in fact, workshopped last week. It's being discussed here tonight. It is something that was put into place in a temporary basis, so we have some real field experience as to how it's been working so far. My understanding is it's been working in an acceptable manner. This was something that was requested by a citizen of Downers Grove. We have both corporate citizens and we have residential citizens in Downers Grove. And we do try to do what we can to assist with respect to keeping Downers Grove a vibrant place to have a business as well as to have a house, because those two things are very symbiotic in keeping our overall lifestyle here in Downers Grove the way it is and maintaining it. You raise a good point, though, about the use of TAP, the Transportation and Parking Commission, and particularly because August is the time of year when we look at a lot of things with respect to our various boards and commissions. I'm happy to take up with staff what has been the history over the last, say, 6-12 months with the use of transportation and parking, and see if there's a better way where we can be more robustly using the volunteers on that board. That's something that we periodically will look at with respect to all our boards and commissions. And I would just say, as a matter of practice, things tend to ebb and flow. I don't think it's anything more than that.
Well, I respect your comments. However, I find that the input that you had last week, the only input you got was from the commissioners, and was only one input from David Olson, which means that either the sitting commissioners are not knowledgeable, or they didn't want to get involved, or they hadn't, have no personal interest in the project, so to speak.
Well, I appreciate your comments. Obviously, we'll take that into account in terms of future use of the board and commission. But I wouldn't suggest just because myself or any of my colleagues don't speak up on an issue that we haven't done our homework.
Okay.
Obviously, we have a great deal of information available to us.
I just throwing that out, like you throwing out things. But I also feel that lately, since the reconstruction where we put all the money out, bond issues to do redevelopment of subdivisions, that the staff is taking a different attitude towards the public. And what we used to have, I've been going to Transportation Parking Commission meetings since early 2000s. You remember?
Yes, I do.
Yeah, because we didn't have a traffic calming policy at the time.
We didn't have a transportation and parking commission either, I remember that.
Well, we did, we always had, but
Well,
it's not called the same.
Fair enough. Well, thank you.
But I go back a long
Appreciate your
time, so
comments.
that's why, I feel that this has been something that's been serving the public and serving the community for over years.
We'll
And
take a look at the
and I think the
historic
staff has
use.
usurped a lot of that function.
We'll take a look at the historic use of the Transportation and Parking Commission and see if there might be a more robust use for that.
Either we have a commission or we don't. If the staff wants to assume that, I'd be certainly pleased to take my time in a rocking chair. Thank you.
Always good to see you, and thank you for your service on that board. Other questions or comments from members of the audience on this item? All right, questions or comments from members of the Village Council? Commissioner Olson?
Thank you.
I'm shocked that you have a comment.
So given what Mr. Robles said, and it's something I briefly thought of, but really hadn't really considered it, I wonder if it might be prudent to ask those individuals on Transportation and Parking Commission to take a look at it at their next meeting. I don't view this as particularly time-sensitive, so therefore, I'd like to at least, give them the opportunity to take a look at it. So therefore, I'd like to move to refer the item to the Transportation and Parking Commission for review, and then after they've made a recommendation, then it'll obviously come back to us at a later time.
There's a motion, is there a second?
I'll second it.
There's a motion and a second. Questions or comments from the council with respect to the, I'll take as a form of amendment to the motion that was previously made. Commissioner Barnett?
Thanks, Mayor. I wanted to get to this point of having this discussion. What would, other than the obvious, nobody likes temporary conditions, but is there anything that would prevent us, like from a statutory IDOT county sort of an environment, from leaving the temporary condition in place for longer?
Yes, it's our own policy that limits my authority to the duration of temporary improvements.
Okay, so where's our deadline?
It's about now, I think it's 60 days or so, but that, I just want to let you know, that's an internal policy.
Okay.
So that's the only
Nothing
thing.
external to the village, like that,
Right, nothing on a policy or regulatory issue. There's a practical issue where the Esplanade is actually renting all the temporary barrels, et cetera, and has expressed a concern about the ongoing costs and requested that this item be moved as quickly as possible.
all got concerns about ongoing costs as well as certainly future ones as well.
Yes.
I don't have any particular feeling that suggests that we have to move on this, and if TMP is in fact meeting in July, and if in fact our staff could be prepared to go through it then, I would be in support of holding off action here to let that process play out.
Thank you, Commissioner. Other questions or comments? Commissioner Waldeck?
When Mr. Roll started talking, I was wondering why it didn't go through TAP. And I tend to agree. I did ask the question last week. Evidently, Mr. Commissioner Olson spoke, and I didn't. So my questions on how much it would cost for a traffic light and who would pay for it, and what IDOT could do, I appreciate staff's work on that. The cost was $250,000 for a traffic light, and IDOT and the corporate citizen wouldn't be interested in paying for that. That would be us, and I don't think we're interested in doing that. But I do think it's a good idea to have this reviewed by TAP, especially looking at the warrants, so I could go along with that. So I would go along with the motion.
Other questions or comments? Commissioner Burnett?
I just want to add one thing, that there's a short list of things we all hear about, and traffic's on that list. Taxes, stormwater traffic, right? I don't like my government telling me what to do kind of stuff. But traffic is a recurring theme, and we've gone through this at grade schools, for instance, on every couple of years we adjust things, sort of a basis. So I guess because in my mind that's a constant issue, then that's part of why I feel like if we want to change the process, the warrant thing, I think, is probably not understood well by the public. In fact, I'm certain of it. And so anything in this instance, if it sort of feels like it continues a process, I understand the differential between the technical warrant issue, but when we've done warrant changes on Steins as a function of neighborhood studies, for instance, public feels a certain buy-in to the process and sees and feels this process that's developing in front of them of study and warrant development and stuff. And so I can see why it doesn't quite feel the same way to us up here, to our TMP folks, and so that's another part of why I think that it wouldn't hurt us at all to let this thing flow through TMP.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner White?
This is more of a question. If in fact this gets tabled, is there anything council can or should do to allow the temporary situation to continue?
We will look into where we are in that timeline, and if any action is required by council, we'll bring that forward to you at the appropriate time.
Other questions? My only comment is I certainly appreciate the sentiment behind it, but we have been following a policy and a practice, and this would deviate from that policy and practice, and to some degree is a poor example of managing expectations of the requesting party here, which I know personally has been asking about this issue for quite some time. This is not something that just popped up recently. It's been something that one of our corporate citizens has asked about in terms of making an environment that is more conducive to the attraction and retention of businesses and headquarters in our community, our Class A office space, is something that our Economic Development Corporation and our staff and our council, this council and past council, have worked very hard to accomplish. And I'm not suggesting we're going to lose some headquarters if this thing gets sent to transportation and parking, but it would be a deviation from what we normally do. And again, my suggestion usually when someone wants to change a policy on a going forward basis, fine. Then we as a council, as a policymaker, should change policy, not make an ad hoc deviation on an issue that certainly has been workshopped already. We have field experience. We have a positive recommendation from staff at the request of a corporate citizen, who I don't think deserves any less rights than anybody else. Certainly would be equivalent. I'm not in favor of continuing this for whatever delay would be involved in inconvenience and cost. If we want, as a council, change our policies such that all these things go through transportation and parking in the future, that's fine, but then let's make that recommendation and not this deviation. So I'm not going to support the motion, which is actually not to table or to amend, but a motion to refer this item, ordinance 2016-6843, to transportation and parking for review and a subsequent recommendation to the council. Other questions or comments? Hearing none, then a roll call on the motion to transfer, or motion to refer.
Commissioner Olson?
Aye.
Commissioner Barnett?
Aye.
Commissioner Waldeck?
Aye.
Commissioner White?
Nay.
Commissioner Fatimo? Aye. Commissioner Jose?
Aye.
Mayor Tully?
Nay. The motion to refer to transportation and parking passes, and that brings us to, and we'll advise the petitioner
Yes.
of the timetable that will be involved in that. That brings us to item 6C as in Charlie. Do I have a motion to adopt a resolution accepting the comprehensive annual financial report of the Village of Downers Grove for the fiscal year January 1, 2015 through December 31st, 2015?
Mayor Tully, I move to adopt a resolution to accept the comprehensive annual report of the Village of Downers Grove for the fiscal year January 1, 2015 through December 31, 2015 as presented.
Second.
A motion and a second. And before we go to any questions from the audience, I understand we have a representative of our auditing firm here tonight to share some words with us about the item. Good evening.
Good evening. Thank you for letting me be here. I'm Jason Coyle with Baker Tilly. We are the auditing firm for the village. As required by law, passed last year, and this was the first time I was here last year, I'm required now to come before you and present your financial statements and our what we commonly call our management letter to you. I'll keep my comments very brief. I know you've had several weeks to look at your financial statements at this point, but if you do have any questions while I'm here, I'm more than happy to take them. The village does continue to issue what's known as a comprehensive annual financial report, as was mentioned, is described on the cover of the financial statements. The level of reporting is above and beyond what is actually required. The comprehensive annual financial report includes additional information both at the beginning and the end of the financial statements, which just provides a higher level of transparency of your operations to the user of the financial statements and obviously provides them with more information. The village actually prepares this entire document, which is a little bit of a rarity in local municipal governments. We actually prepare this document for a substantial portion of our clients. The fact that you have staff on hand who are qualified to be able to do that is something you should be very proud of. It's a lengthy document. It takes a lot of time to prepare. The only information here that comes from our firm is about a 3-page opinion. The opinion says that the financial statements are materially accurate and can be relied upon by the users of the financial statements. That is the highest level of assurance we can give, and that opinion hasn't changed in its form since the prior year. I'll just mention a couple things on the village's financial health and then one change on the reporting standards. One of the things we looked at when we look at the financial health of any municipality is, are your fund balances increasing year over year? And in almost every fund this year, including your most important fund, your general fund, your main operating fund balances did increase, with the exception of your capital improvements fund. The fund balance there decreased, but by the nature of that fund, that's that's not unexpected. You also have certain funds that are meant to be self-supporting. They charge they charge revenue, for the services provided, such as your water fund, and each of those funds brought in enough revenue to sustain themselves. So again, looking at the financial health by those aspects, the village is in a good position. One big change for your financial statements this year relates to the pensions. You have 3 pension plans with the village, IMRF, a police pension plan, and a firefighter's pension plan. There's something known as a net pension liability related to each one of those plans. For this year, that net pension liability was now shown on the face of the financial statements of the village. Previously, it had simply been disclosed within the notes to the financial statements. So the information was there, but now this new standard puts it on the face of the financial statements. That totaled about approximately $82.3 million for the village this year. And along with that new standard, there's a lot of new detailed information in the notes of the financial statements related to the pensions. There's another form of communication that we provided to the village, both to management and both to yourself. When we come in to do the audit, one of the things we look at is the controls within the finance department, or your checks and balances. If we find anything that needs to rise to the level that we need to report it to you as a concern in your operations, we're required to do that in this communication. I'm happy to report that every year we've been here, we've not had anything that rose to that level that needed to go into written communication. And again, that puts you into a rather elite status by not having any of those recommendations, and something, again, you should be very proud of, that you have good policies and procedures in place to protect taxpayers' dollars. So with that, I'll open it up to any questions you might have on either our communication or on your financial statements.
Well, terrific. Thank you very much for the glowing report. We are, in fact, very proud of that. It is not easily attained, and something that takes a lot of effort by a lot of people behind the scenes to keep going in that respect. We appreciate you coming in and confirming that. Before we let you go, any questions or comments from members of the council of our auditor representative? Very good. Stay close just in case. Any questions or comments from any members of the audience? Well, thank you very much. Appreciate seeing you.
Thank you.
And look forward to another successful review next year.
Thank you.
With that, I'd like to ask for a roll call, please.
Commissioner Olson?
Aye.
Commissioner White?
Aye.
Commissioner Waldeck?
Aye.
Commissioner Fatimo? Aye. Commissioner Jose?
Aye.
Commissioner Barnett?
Aye.
Mayor Tully?
Aye. That matter passed unanimously and brings us to the end of our active agenda. That brings us to item 7, our first reading or our workshop agenda. This is the portion of our meeting where items are presented to us for consideration and discussion purposes only. No vote will be taken on any of these items at this point in time. What we typically do here is, because this is the first time it's being presented to the village council, is we allow for a presentation from village staff, any petitioners who may be involved with respect to the items, and then the village council is given an opportunity to first ask questions and get some more information from staff or any petitioners with respect to the item. And then we will turn it over to questions or comments from the audience, and of course then have an opportunity for the council to weigh in as well. This is a more informal discussion because it's not our active agenda. I do want to ask a question, though, and see if we can modify things a little bit. Just out of curiosity, given the other things on the agenda tonight, by show of hands, could people tell me how many people are here with respect to the items D through G under the first reading 7 that pertain to the proposed development at Main and Maple? Okay, thank you. I appreciate that. What I'm going to suggest, if nobody reports me to the state AG's office, is I'm going to suggest that we move items A, B, and C to the end, and we take up D, E, F, and G first to accommodate those who are in the audience that may have something that they want to speak of that issue. Fair point. How many folks here are in the audience to speak to the proposed questions regarding a stormwater utility, items 7, A, B, and C?
I think that's pretty clear.
All right, well, then with no offense to, we will get to it, don't worry. But if there's no mass riot over that, I'm going to suggest, and with the deference of my colleagues, we are going to move to items 7, D, E, F, and G first at this point in time.
Thank you, Mayor.
As is customary, we typically ask the village manager or his staff to introduce these items for discussion, and I don't know if you want to take those together or...
Thank you, Mayor. We will take items D, E, and F first. They are the zoning-related items for the petition regarding the corner of Main and Maple. First, we'll have a brief presentation providing some background information from our Community Development Director, Stan Popovich, and then Grady Hamilton from the petitioner, Trammell Crow, will provide some introductory comments as well. Stan.
Very good. Good evening.
Good evening, Mayor. Good evening, Council. As Manager Fieldman noted, this item's requested a special use for multifamily use in the downtown business zoning district, a planned unit development for a mixed-use building in the downtown business zoning district, and then a rezoning associated with the planned unit development from a DB downtown business to a DB PUD. The property Main and Maple is located here in the downtown. It's the southern gateway into downtown. The property contains 3 parcels. The parcel's on the left, which is the west, is the village parking lot. There's a commercial parcel in the middle of 1000 Maple, and then a non-conforming single-family residence at 946 Maple Avenue. Petitioner proposing to construct a 6-story mixed-use building with 115 apartments and 3,900 square feet of retail and 162 parking spaces within the building and within the basement. This is the first floor plan that shows the parking on the east side of the building there, 3,900 square feet of retail space along Main Street, an apartment lobby, gathering space at the corner of Main and Maple. Additionally, you see some public improvements. These 2 areas, 2 on-street parking spaces provided on Main Street, and then 8 spaces along Maple Avenue. The 2 furthest would be striped for loading prior to 11 o'clock in the morning. If we look at the elevation here, again, we see high-quality materials, which are brick and cementous or metal panels there. We look at the design guidelines that we have. There's a good base here with windows along Maple Avenue a little bit, and then here along Main Street. We have a horizontal band that separates the base from the middle. The middle is has got a good facade to it with windows and rhythm. If we look at the Maple Avenue elevation, you can see some changes in plane that create some visual interest. And then again, the top of the building is articulated, and on this elevation you can see there's a terrace on the 6th floor along Main Street there. So the building does meet our design guidelines. If we look at this perspective here, you see some of the amenities on the 2nd deck, which includes the outdoor pool, and then there's some common spaces in there as well. There's a question about height and how that is. The zoning ordinance allows 70 feet in height. The building's just under 70 feet tall. It's taller along Main Street based on the topography. If you look at how the 2 buildings relate with the proposed Main and Maple project and then the existing Marquis and Maple that was approved, we measure building height to the flat part of the roof. And the building height's the highest point. So at the Main and Maple building, we have 2 front facades. So we look at the Maple Avenue facade for height and then the Main Street facade for height. So the Main Street facade is where the height comes from here. The Marquis and Maple only has 1 frontage along Maple Avenue, so that height was 59 feet, whereas the Main and Maple is just under 70 feet. If you look at how these buildings relate, taking a look at what people will see, which is the top of the parapet wall, the Main and Maple at this location, which is adjacent, and this is the best scale I could get in PowerPoint and about the separation distance that they would have. Main and Maple is going to be about 67 feet to the top of the parapet. It's 60 feet to the top of the parapet at Marquis, and then the tower there, which is not counted for height, again, is about 67 feet in the Marquis and Maple. So that was one question that came up at Plan Commission, so I just wanted to relate on how the buildings potentially will look here when they're both constructed, if they're both approved. With regard to traffic, the petitioner completed a traffic study. The intersections are operating at an acceptable level of service, and there's an acceptable level of service for the entrance exit to the Main and Maple project. The only intersection side that wasn't operating at an acceptable level of service was westbound Maple and Washington, and that's primarily due to existing traffic patterns and the amount of traffic coming through there, and it would be a minimal impact with this development, as the traffic engineers found out. They also looked at parking with the loss of village parking spaces there. The petitioner study found available parking in the other areas of downtown, and that coincides with our available parking from a 2011 parking study that the village completed for the downtown as well. Just to quickly go over the Main and Maple history there, the village purchased the lot in '93. It's always been sort of a temporary parking lot. It was identified in 2003 for redevelopment. Prior to that, it was proposed to be a park. 2006, the council approved an RFP for redevelopment. Obviously, the economy changed and that project did not move forward. And then the 2011 comprehensive plan calls it a catalyst site and a key site for infill. Moving on to the comprehensive plan, it is catalyst site number 16, a southern gateway key infill site. The proposal meets many of the objectives of the downtown focus area plan shown on the screen here. It also meets other goals and policies in the comprehensive plan, a transit-oriented development, which this is, reinforces the downtown as a cultural and social center of the village, and it provides additional residents to the downtown. So that's how the proposed development is consistent with comprehensive plan. The zoning ordinance identifies what type of developments are appropriate for planned unit developments, shown here that this proposal meets those. And additionally, it meets objectives that planned unit development should meet as well, shown on the screen. There are 3 sets of standards that have to be met: planned unit development standards, rezoning standards, and the special use standards. Those are all shown in the staff report and a description of how staff believes those standards have been met. At this point, I'd like to turn it over to Grady Hamilton of Trammell Crow, and he can discuss his project a little bit more with you tonight.
Thank you, Mr. Popovich. Good evening, welcome.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, Commissioners, Mr. Fieldman, Mr. Popovich, Ms. Petrarca, and other members of staff. My name is Grady Hamilton. I'm with Trammell Crow Company, and on behalf of my Trammell Crow colleagues, John Carlson, David Payno, and Mary Lucas, as well as other members of our project team, we very much appreciate your consideration of our project, and also that the dedication of your staff that's helped us evolve the project to the point where you see it this evening. Mr. Popovich's introduction to the project, I think, covered a great deal of the detail of the project, so I won't repeat what has already been said, but instead I'd like to characterize some of the reasons why we believe this project is so well suited for the village. Our team has developed nearly 1,000 units over 6 projects in just the past 3 years, and in each case, our projects have focused on the renter that seeks an amenity-rich, luxurious apartment community that capitalizes on the vibrancy of in-place neighborhood amenities and transportation being among those. In 2 other suburban Chicago projects that we've recently completed of very similar scale and context, one in Uptown Park Ridge and the other in downtown Glenview, we've not only seen robust demand for the residential units, but we've seen positive effects that these projects and its residents or their residents have had on the neighboring businesses such as restaurants, coffee shops, service-based retailers, grocers, boutique retailers, and fitness studios. The renter profile for a project like this ranges from a Downers Grove resident seeking to exchange life in a single-family home, but one that allows them to stay in the community in which they love, but with less maintenance, to a mid-level professional who perhaps works in the area, wants to remain close to work, but chooses to be within the great core that is the village of Downers Grove and also close to public transportation for access to the city. We also see new entrants to the village that might need a temporary residence while they select a home in the village to permanently live in. And we've also seen in other projects where residents of the municipalities in which we've developed are reinvesting in their current home and need a place temporarily to relocate to while some of that reinvestment has been made through remodeling projects. Through our experience, we've learned that the scale of a project such as what we've proposed is the perfect balance of supporting the on-site management and maintenance that we provide, as well as the on-site amenities and the self-contained parking, but also remain small enough to emit a level of boutique-ness and a boutique feel to the community. This boutique nature, I think, really allows these projects to become communities within themselves. We oftentimes see our residents sharing common spaces together in many of the amenities that we're providing, and certainly we have on-site management that allows all the residents to be greeted throughout the day as they come and go. The renters that select Maple and Main as their home are doing so to be close to the businesses, restaurants, activities, culture, and transportation in this community, but they are also doing so because they want a luxurious, high-service place to live. And by providing richly appointed club rooms, a well-equipped fitness center, pool deck, pet spa, and luxurious unit finishes, we are providing a lifestyle housing option that doesn't presently exist. We were encouraged to find that the Downers Grove comprehensive plan calls for just this type of development when we selected these 3 sites as a candidate for our next project. And in spite of the fact that the majority of planning commissioners found this project to meet what is intended by the comprehensive plan, we did pay very close attention to the comments and concerns expressed by neighbors at the hearing 2 weeks ago. The comments that were specific to our project related to matters such as traffic, safety, congestion, and noise. And it's important to know that all these factors are also very important to us as well, and that this project has been, and if we're fortunate to be approved, will continue to be a significant investment on our part, and certainly one that we don't take lightly. And I think even further, if we can't assure our residents that these potential challenges are being addressed or mitigated, it could impact our ability to be successful. So many of the comments that have been raised by the community we're very much aligned with. From our experience in Park Ridge and Glenview, and amidst very similar circumstances, we found that professional execution of the construction phase, coupled with high service management and maintenance staff and strong communication with both residents and neighbors alike, positions us to successfully address these concerns. And in both cases, we've been able to achieve the outcome that we hope to achieve here, and in both cases, our projects have been met with extraordinary demand. So in closing, I'd like to just mention, as I think has been mentioned before, we are joined by the experts within our project team that are here to address any questions as they arise. We'll appoint the right respondent to the questions as they arise, and thank you once again for your consideration.
Thank you, Mr. Hamilton. What we'll do at this point in time is afford the members of the Village Council an opportunity to ask questions of either staff or the petitioner with respect to this proposal. We are all acutely aware of the lengthy Plan Commission meeting, and some of us even attended it and heard all the comments that were made at that point. I know my other colleagues have certainly had the opportunity to review the outcome of that meeting as well. So at this point in time, with all that backdrop, I'll open it up from members of my colleagues here in the Village Council to ask questions of either the petitioner or staff. Questions or comments? Commissioner Waldeck.
Thank you, Mayor. Real quick question. You mentioned after the Planning Commission, there were issues raised about traffic safety and some other, and you didn't mention density. And I was wondering if there were any changes to density or what specific changes were made to the plans as a result of the Plan Commission, if any.
Thank you, Commissioner. We, through the course of that discussion, did hear comments about density. I appreciate you raising that. We believe that our project bulk dimension requirements fit within the vision of the comprehensive plan and the underlying zoning as being proposed for this project. We certainly acknowledge the unit count issue, and it's certainly a part of our request, but we believe that the size of the building reflects the intent of the comprehensive plan. That consideration was also presented to us, or I guess reacted to by the planning commissioners that way. So we have not made any changes to the plans relative to density.
Okay, any other changes as a direct result of the Plan Commission, or?
No, we have not made any changes as a result of the Plan Commission. We are acutely aware of the comments relative to traffic and stormwater and noise and operation, and we had an opportunity to respond to many of those, and again, we believe that there's alignment in some of those concerns because they certainly would affect us too, and we want to ensure a safe and appropriate environment there for our residents and our neighbors to mutually enjoy.
Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. Other questions or comments? Commissioner White?
Time for comments to them or comments about the proposal overall?
I will leave that to your discretion.
Okay.
I initially wanted to have an opportunity for us to ask questions of staff or the petitioner, but
If someone wants to ask a question of the petitioner,
okay.
please, but they should go first.
That's what I had in mind.
Right.
Commissioner Olson?
You mentioned that this is viewed as a luxury type of apartment, rental living. I think that some people in the community, there's been concern raised about, rentals, the rentals, it starts out great and then goes downhill very fast. So could you comment on both maybe perhaps the price point and perhaps the operation, maybe experiences that you've had? I know you mentioned a couple of projects in the past few years. Does your firm have experience, perhaps over, a longer period of properties and how they've, either kept up or not?
Absolutely, Commissioner Olson. The multifamily market has evolved quite a bit since the middle part of the last decade, when condominium development was perhaps more popular than rental and luxury market rate rental multifamily. We've seen a meaningful shift in the renter by choice mode of the rental segments that a project like this appeals to. The home ownership rate has declined, and the promise of appreciation has varied depending on asset or project by project. So we're seeing a much greater source of demand from the public for assets like this. These projects are also, as I described in my introductory comments, very amenity-rich, and that's very unique. And what we've found with our projects in both Glenview and Park Ridge, and what we've also been able to quantifiably achieve, is that there was an opportunity for us to fill a need in the marketplace where demand wasn't being met by the existing stock of luxury market rate rental property. And in doing so, we've been able to enjoy, in those two projects, the highest per square foot rental rates in suburban Chicago outside of some of the more robust tower product that can be found in downtown Evanston, of course. But we believe that that demonstrates the need for this product, the way that it brings in the upper bracket market rate renter to enjoy the benefits and amenities within the downtown village core. They've done so in Park Ridge, they've done so in downtown Glenview, and it's strengthened, quite frankly, a number of the businesses that surround those projects.
Okay, thank you for that description. I think I guess the question I'd have is when you look at the market here, do you see, you mentioned that these projects in Park Ridge and Glenview, are there any material differences, in terms of, I don't know whether it's transportation or the size of the community or something like that you view as perhaps would be either positive or negative to the success of the project?
I don't distinguish those projects from this one in terms of the prospects for success. We have, I think, a lot of similarities in terms of the underlying policies that helped enable a project like this to fit within the comprehensive plan. That was very much the case in downtown Glenview. That was a revitalization effort on the part of that village in 2008 when they established a form-based code. So there are a lot of similarities in the underlying initiative that leads to a project like this that is, I think, in great conformance with the comprehensive plan. I will say, perhaps back to some of your earlier questioning, Commissioner Olson, that these assets become meaningful investments for large institutional owners. And as an example, our project in Park Ridge is owned by an institutional owner now. Our project in Glenview, we partnered with an institutional owner. We will do so here as well. These are very significant investments that, to the concern that I think in your first question about they all start great and then they recede, the amenity levels, the investment levels don't allow a project like this to recede. The attention to maintaining the first-class nature of these projects is essential to the underlying investment thesis and model by which we hope to achieve the same outcome here.
Okay, so your firm is the developer, but you don't operate this or own it long?
We hire a third-party management and leasing firm that actually the same firm is operating, managing, and leasing the property in Glenview and in Park Ridge. They're a service provider. That's the line of business that they're in. They're a professional management firm. We'll have members of that team on staff every day, and including maintenance technicians to address issues with loading, issues with mechanical failure, issues with inclement weather, making sure that we have safe passage around the building wherever we can do so in particularly winter inclement weather. So we are an investor in this project as the developer. We generally form partnerships with equity sources to co-invest with us in these, and in this case, we would be doing that.
Okay, thank you. Maybe staff could answer the next question. Regarding the fire safety of the building, I noticed that there's a portion of the building that's, there's obviously clearly along Maple, along Main Street, but then there's the portion that kind of goes behind some of those other buildings. Are there any concerns from a fire safety perspective in that design?
The Fire Prevention Division reviewed the plans, didn't have any comments about that. The building will be fully sprinklered and alarmed as well.
Thank you.
And no issues with respect to ingress and egress?
That's correct.
Getting equipment on site is necessary for
Correct.
fire prevention, fire
They
safety.
believe they have access adequate access off of Maple and Main Street. to do what they would need to do.
Thank you. I think that's all the questions I have.
All right, plenty of time for comments later. Any questions of staff or petitioner at this point? Okay, then what I'm going to do, and we'll have an opportunity to comment again after hearing from the public. Since there were a number of folks that kindly signified that they were interested in speaking on this topic, one thing I would like to ask, particularly out of deference to, I know there's at least one individual here that would like to talk about the proposed stormwater utility referenda questions that we have afterwards. So if everyone could, out of respect and decorum with their neighbors, do me a couple favors. Number one, try to limit your comments to 5 minutes or less. That would be greatly appreciated. Number two, try not to say the same thing again if someone has already made your point, and most of you are pretty good. I remember seeing some of the faces from the Plan Commission meeting. You're pretty good at getting your point across. If someone has already made your point, you might just say, I agree with the previous speaker. That would help move things along. And number third, if everyone could also do me a favor, and whether someone speaks for or against the project, please don't hold your applause. It's not America's Got Talent. We'd like to maintain our decorum here and let everyone speak and not feel as though they're either being commented on or judged one way or the other. I think that we owe that at least to the rest of our neighbors. And with that, I'd like to ask anyone that would like to comment on these items to please come to the podium. Tell us who you are, and we welcome hearing from you. Good evening, welcome.
Hi. I will keep my comments short, although I will admit that, Mayor Tully, some of them may be familiar to you from before. My name is Diane Buck. I am the owner of Spice Merchants of Downers Grove, located at 5225 Main Street. My store is immediately adjacent to the proposed Trammell Crow building site. The parking lot that will be acquired for this development is a lot that over 80% of my customers currently use on a regular basis. Since the time this proposal was announced and the signage went up on the corner of that lot, my staff and I informally started asking our customers when they park, where they park when visiting our store. And this is roughly how we received at that percentage, or arrived rather at that percentage. I spoke at the Planning Commission on June 6th, and I'm sad to say that some of my concerns were not addressed. I wish to raise these concerns and questions again this evening, as well as a number of questions that have arisen upon my more thorough reading of the proposal and the Commission's report in detail. I'll try to keep this quick. On page 3 of the Commission's report, the proposed development will provide an additional 8 on-street parking spaces, of which 2 will be designated as loading zones until 11 a.m. The loss of 19 spaces, including business permit and single handicapped accessible space, will be lost. Using the Kimley Horn data provided on page 10 of their report, current parking usage during the reported times that they provided, all downtown parking is at approximately 90% saturation, when including those additional 29 spaces they wish to eliminate. If the net loss of 19 spaces is included, that saturation goes up to 93% at the same time frame. As I stated in the June 9th meeting, the time frame given for the Kimley Horn charts is over 2 days in April. One is a weekday, a Thursday, the other is a weekend day, and that is a Saturday. Those 2 days had reported cooler temperatures than average in cloudy conditions, which leads to lower retail traffic. My question is this: how does the village plan to accommodate the loss of 19 parking spaces on the south end of town? The elimination of this lot will remove the only handicap accessible spot on the south end of Main Street, a space that is very important to a number of businesses on the south end of town. In 2007, a village approved a PUD with another developer, which fell through due to economic conditions. How does this plan compare to the previous one that was approved? Why wasn't the same developer contacted to develop this site now that economic conditions have approved? Why was the decision made to go with apartment homes rather than condos, especially given that 3 similar communities with 157 total units are already approved and projected to begin construction within the next year or two and will be completed prior to the opening of Maple and Main? Given the significant amount of density variance requested, how can the Commission state that development is compliant and meets the requirements with the PUD? These new units will be 500 square feet less than what is required per the zoning. I understand that variances have been permitted for other developments, but this variance is double that of the Burlington Station, the next closest variance granted. In the commentary regarding compliance with comprehensive plan, it is stated that the parking garage, quote, likely offsets any public parking. How was likely determined and who determined it? What metrics were used? And were the business owners on that end of town consulted regarding their customer usage, something that we are very well aware of? The Commission's plan reports that new development and improvements will have, quote, "no significant effect on future conditions at the nearby intersections." Again, how was this determined? Was it taken independently or in conjunction with the other 4 developments in the area, not just the Marquee on Maple? The parking study provided by the developer was conducted in 4 days over mid-April. During the Planning Commission hearing, I asked about methodology and timeline. My questions were not answered, so I posed them again. Was this study conducted over only 4 days, or was it longitudinal over the course of a year? When I pressed about the longitudinal nature of this study, it was claimed that they conducted it, quote, "over a period of time." I have been speaking over a period of time. That doesn't actually tell us anything how long that period of time was. Can they please state the exact timeline used to collect the data reported? A 4-day period of time does not reflect busier months like November and December holiday traffic, June and December busy retail, event, and farmers market traffic, or September and October back to school and fall traffic. What was the study methodology? The research company lists, quote, "field observation as a means of data collection." Does this mean that a single person or group of staffers were out counting cars and traffic volume over the reported periods? How long were they present at that location? Were there discrete counts, meaning were they there for a 15-minute period of time, or were they present for the entire 2 hours in which they reported upon? Did they use any sort of sensor to count flow in and out of that traffic? Why did the reporting time begin at 11 a.m. when businesses on this end of town open as early as 9 a.m.? For those who frequent the businesses on the south end of town, many of them, including my store, the knitting shop, the Mexican restaurant, and some of the stores that are in place on the west side of town, they stop in just to pick up what they need and leave, meaning their parking requirements can be 10 to 15 minutes rather than a 3-hour time limit. Therefore, if they were only there for a 15-minute period of time, they may not have accounted for the amount of flow that goes in and out of those parking lots at that particular part of time. Were any projections made with regard to the staff of Oakley Home Builders moving in or the new fitness center moving in sometime in the coming months? What additional studies, if any, were conducted over those times to reflect a more accurate impact of the loss of this lot to the retail and businesses in that area of downtown? With respect to the traffic between Maple and Washington and Main, the reports from both the Village in 2011 and Kimley Horn show that Washington-Maple intersection currently operates at a poor level of service for westbound traffic. Both the Marquee and Maple and Main will put additional stress on an already poor intersection. Why has the Village staff, essentially, decided to accept poor conditions and wish to make them worse rather than trying to improve them? It appears that the Commission's position is that it's already bad, so what difference does it make? The parking study completed in 2011 has not been updated to reflect the changes to the downtown business community. It specifically references that there's enough parking for over 75,000 square feet of retail space, but did the Village take into account the number of restaurants that have opened since 2011 whose parking needs are different than that of retail? Have they taken into account increased metro ridership and spaces for commuters, or increased traffic from surrounding suburbs whose population wish to shop small rather than in big box stores present in other nearby downtown neighborhoods such as Naperville? Has anyone quantified the projections made in the 2011 study to current conditions to see if the new study needs to be commissioned and if those assumptions are still correct? The Village has stated that the intent of the parking lot on Maple and Main was only to be in service for 4 to 6 years during and following the construction of the parking garage. However, the lot has been in existence for 15 years. It is the expectation of the public and the business owners on the south end of town that this lot will be available for customers. Loss of this lot will impact retail traffic that can either not locate parking in the garage, again, that 93% saturation in an off month, or who have accessibility issues and cannot physically walk from the garage to the south retail shops and restaurants. Does the Village propose to replace this parking other than 8 additional spots provided by the developer? The Commissioner's report states that property owners within 250 feet of the proposed development were contacted for comment about this development in a May meeting. However, the business owners, those that would be most impacted, were not contacted at all. The report shows that 2 nearby residents were supportive of the proposed development, but it did not comment on how many were against. Is that data known, and has it been collected, and will it be reported upon? Based on the findings of fact, a number of criteria must be met for the PUD to be approved. Among those are, quote, whether appropriate terms and conditions have been imposed on the approval to protect the interests of surrounding property owners and residents, existing and future residents of the PUD, and the general public. The significant reduction of parking and additional traffic does not protect the interests of the business owners at this end of town, as well as the business owners further north on Maple and Curtis, whose customers park here because it is more convenient. A number of comments in the report study that the property is underutilized. How is that quantified? Is it by tax revenue? Is there any consideration for intrinsic value given to community members and visitors who wish to visit and park conveniently? The proposal claims that new development will, quote, provide additional residents who will shop and dine in downtown. Given Trammell Crow's developments on Park Ridge, which they use as a case study, and Glenview, do they have any data to back up this claim? For example, do businesses in that area show increased sales or receipts, taxes collected, or other positive financial impacts on the businesses in those areas? Were the businesses in those areas contacted by the village to provide feedback on any positives or negatives in addition to the addition of the development in their community? Mr. Hamilton just states that other properties show positive results. How were those quantified to the developer? The proposal claims that it will, quote, increase the number of residents in downtown, which will increase the desirability of the downtown to retailers looking to locate in downtown Downers Grove. According to Downtown Management Corp., there are over 100 existing retail locations available, including the 2 that are part of this development. There are only 3 spaces currently available for lease, including the 2 that will be proposed in the new development. What retailers exactly is the village looking to attract downtown, given that retail space is at capacity? Is it their intent to push out small, locally owned businesses such as mine in favor of large retail chains? When reading the council notes going back to 11/13/2001 regarding the development on the lot in Maple and Main, Jim Russ of Downtown Management Corp. stated at that time that the biggest issue that comes up with potential new businesses is the lack of parking. This is still the case now 15 years later. Given the addition of 3,900 square feet of retail or restaurant space in an already crowded parking situation, where does the village envision these new customers parking, especially on the south end that is losing 29 spaces with only 10 replacements and 2 new businesses that have yet to open? For the developments in the Chicago area that Trammell Crow has already opened, how did the demographic profile differ from that of projection? Did they attract the renter they expected? What was the churn rate for the attendants? How many had to move due to economic constraints and expensive rents? Given that millennials have the largest student loan debt in history, decreased or stagnant wages for new entries into the job market post-college, and high expenses of commuting into the city, how do they expect to fill over 73% of the units with young professionals? A June 7th report by Zillow shows that in year over year, in 2015 to 2016, there is a decrease in luxury rental apartments overall throughout the U.S., with Chicago metro area showing a 2.3% decrease overall. In the Trammell Crow plan, the developer states that to deliver the same level of product and service in the apartment building, a minimum unit count of 115 units is required. Is this because it is not economically feasible otherwise? If 115 units is considered boutique, what is considered larger than boutique? On May 24th, the meeting that developer and local property owners was held. However, local business owners were not invited. I have a few follow-up questions as well to those that were asked to those in attendance. The target demographic of young professionals, young married, and empty nesters was listed. How was that determined? Regarding traffic, Kim Lee Horn stated that the traffic conditions of this new development were consistent with typical conditions and challenges of any downtown development. Typical how? Compared to what other downtown areas? Were all 5 new developments factored into the conditions and assumptions, or only Trammell Crow and the Marquee? The questioner asked if retailers were notified of this development, and we were not. A question not answered or addressed by the questioner at the meeting. They also expressed concern about the loss of the parking for the retailers on the south end of Main. Kim Lee Horn stated that the parking could be adequately handled within the village parking garage, which again, in an off month, was showing at 93% saturation. How can Kim Lee Horn come to this conclusion, given that the study was only for 4 days in April and did not take into account the fluctuation of seasonal retail traffic, village events, etc.? I swear I'm almost done. In the Kim Lee Horn executive summary, the report states that high demand from daily parking permits and employee users in the existing parking garage suggests that there may be some benefit to redesigning a portion of the hourly parking for these users. Has the village planned to address the parking issue that exists throughout downtown? The report states that garage usage decreases after 5 p.m. and attributes that decrease to commuters, but many downtown businesses also close at 5 p.m., as do some of the restaurants. What is the hurry in the development of this site? It is sat empty for 15 years, and there isn't a rental market rush happening right now for Downers Grove. With 4 other developments set to begin construction around downtown, how do we know the village can attract 272 minimum new renters in downtown, plus an additional 55 new condo buyers? As I stated before, with the elimination of this lot, there will be no handicapped accessible spaces at all on the south end of town. What does the village plan to do to accommodate that loss? According to a 2014 study published by Transport Reviews, traffic studies reviewed in all 6 continents with dates as recent as 2012 show that usage and projection reports can vary as much as 30% above forecast. This study concluded that even with no bias, a general lack of precision in forecasting projections should give pause to feasibility and accuracy of specific reports. Has that, or how has that factored at all into how these the traffic studies that we have been provided are accepted as accurate? Finally, where are all the development's visitors going to park? How is it feasible to expect each rental will only have 1 car and only, well, actually 1 unit will have less than 1 visitor at a time? What if that lot is full of workers, residents, and visitors? Will they park in an already full garage downtown the existing parking structure? Or will they take the spaces that were intended to be downtown retail spaces for of the 10 that were provided? Okay, sorry, conclusion, I promise. In conclusion, let me be clear that I am not anti-development. As I stated in the letter to all the members of the council and to you, Mr. Mayor, which you should have received by now, I believe that a robust downtown consists not only of businesses, but of residents, events, and activities for those in the village. But given the amount of questions here from just one single business owner upon reading the proposal in full, in detail, I have to wonder if this is the right project for the village. With all the other developments scheduled to begin construction soon, wouldn't taking a more measured approach be more appropriate? Evaluate the impact of those developments on the downtown traffic, community, and parking before adding another large development to the mix. Finally, a brief personal note. I opened my store on August 1st, 2013 after buying it from the original family that opened it. On the afternoon of my opening day, I received a visit from Mayor Tully. Mr. Mayor, I'm not sure you remember this, but your visit made a tremendous impact on me. I was a first-time entrepreneur, and I was nervous, excited, scared, and elated at finally opening up my new business. You came in to welcome me to the community and to express how happy you were that someone purchased the store and kept it opened. You mentioned the importance of small businesses in downtown and how they made us what we are in terms of being different from other towns. I left that day and told everyone I could that I received a visit from the mayor on my opening day. I knew that I had made the right decision to open in Downers Grove. Excuse me. The loss of this lot without a viable replacement other than the parking garage is a real threat to me. I know my customers and I know their motivations and behavior. I've used my 3 years here to develop a community within a community, not just a retail store. We have created a number of classes, we have created clubs, all of which meet on a regular basis out of my store, and I have a number of customers who just come in to visit because they have gotten to know one another over these past few years. I know that even having to park as little as a quarter mile away will decrease the ability for people to come and make a special stop as opposed to going to the many other places that they can buy my products. In addition, I have had a revolving door of people and emails from customers and residents thanking me for speaking out at the commission meeting, expressing frustration that their comments and concerns are being ignored or passed over, and that this is just a formality before rubber stamping the project. Please don't let these concerns be accurate. Please also consider the existing business owners and the impact on the loss of parking that will affect us all if this development goes through. Thank you for your time.
No, thank you for your comments. I appreciate them. And if you have them written up,
I can email them to you.
could
There's
you
a lot
please do
here.
that? Because I tried to get about a dozen of them down, and I couldn't get them down fast enough.
Yeah, I know. I had 5 minutes. I had to fit it all in.
Well, I didn't want to interrupt, but if you could actually
I can.
email us the whole list, I think that would be very helpful. I'm sure my colleagues would appreciate it as well.
Okay.
Thank you for your comments, and certainly with respect to parking, in the 16 years I've been involved with the village council in one capacity or another, parking has always been an issue. The north side thinks we favor the south end thinks we favor the north end.
Of course.
And the middle thinks we favor the other two ends.
Of course.
The downtown, the words that I shared with you back when you opened, and I meant them today, I meant them then, I mean them today, remain true. This community makes a tremendous investment in the vibrancy of the downtown, even though it's not one of our biggest economic generators. It pales in comparison to other economic corridors we have in our community, and yet in many respects it's the heart and soul of Downers Grove, and people look at it that way. We're 2 days away from having the largest block party in the entire downtown, and some would say in far and wide here in our community in the form of Flow Fest. The downtown is a very special place, and we make enormous investment in the downtown. Some would say too much. Some would say that we spend too much time on small businesses in downtown. It's all about competing interests and balancing what we can.
Of course.
Parking has always been an issue. I can't debate you on that. It will continue to be an issue. There's an old saying that if you have a parking problem, it's a good problem to have, because it means you have customers. And sometimes parking issues are a challenge. But we've dealt with that, and I'm not going to be able to sit here and pretend to give you a specific answer.
I don't expect you
But we
to.
are trying to accommodate the obvious impact on parking that this will have, either with changing things out in the deck or looking at other overall issues. Will we look again at some kind of a downtown parking comprehensive study? You betcha, because we do it periodically, we have to. The deck was once said to be a fool's errand because it was never going to be used. And now I'm loving to hear that we have 93% saturation level in something that I was told probably about 10 years ago from that very spot, no one would use it. So part of it is a vision issue, part of it is understanding that change is going to have an issue. And the only thing I can say about that space, it was never intended to be a parking lot. And how do I know that? Because I was sitting here when we had the conversation.
I've reviewed the notes, I see that.
It was never intended to be a parking lot. It only stayed a parking lot because of the recession, and there was no reason to tear it up until there was an opportunity for the economy to stabilize. Clearly, the handicap parking issue is a legitimate issue. We'll have to address that. I don't disagree with you on that. Why wasn't the old developer from 1990 or whenever it was, 2007, called? I've not done much sure they're around.
They're out of business.
They're out of business, so that's why we didn't call them. Why rental units as opposed to condominiums? I don't want to take up a lot of time because I do want to hear from everybody else, but there's even more to the workforce housing issue in terms of what I'm hearing from businesses and the manufacturers in the area and our Class A office space owners in terms of the type of workforce housing they need in order to support the tech kids who need a place to live that's close to transportation, to nightlife, to restaurants, to cool stores like the Spice Merchant. Otherwise, they go live in Lincoln Park, and that's where the businesses locate. And we want them here. So we have to provide some of that housing for them, for their workforce to be at. So that's one reason among many. Traffic, sure. Traffic's always an issue. And it's something that we'll constantly look at and make adjustments as necessary. We had a traffic discussion earlier tonight where we had a business that was experiencing a situation, came to us, hey, can you help us address it? And there was a proposal to try to address it. Now we're going to table that for a while. But that's an example where we do try to address traffic issues for our corporate residents as well as our residential residents. And again, I'm not going to sit here and pretend to give you a very specific answer, but you should know this is something that we look at with respect to all projects.
I think if I may, just really quickly, and then I will yield the floor. I think the concern that I have as a business owner and the concern that my customers and even people who are just residents who have come in to talk specifically to me about this issue because I spoke up at the Planning Commission, the concern overwhelmingly from everyone who's come to me is that they don't feel they're being listened to and respected, that they feel that this is a done deal. I questioned today, my husband will tell you, I questioned today whether it was worth it for me to even come here and speak up because it really does feel like the decision's already been made. And the impact of this decision, yes, it brings tax relief and offsets the TIF and all those other things that we are aware is happening, but this is being positioned as a living place that my business is one of the marketing tools. Look at what you're moving into. This is already built right here. And if there is no place for the people who shop outside of downtown immediately to come to, I can't survive on downtown foot traffic. I just can't. So it will put me out of business. It just will.
Well,
so
and
that is why
actually,
I need to bring my concerns
Sure.
to you.
And that's exactly why we're very appreciative of the comments. And actually, I think that was item number 8 that I wrote down is this designed to push out small business in favor of chain businesses? Absolutely not. So that's the answer to that question. Of course not. The other thing that I think some folks are getting the wrong impression of is not that we're not listening and there are opportunities to make adjustments and address issues like traffic and parking and the other elements that go to what the criteria that we're supposed to consider in making these decisions on zoning, on special use, on planning and developments. Not everything is relevant to that analysis, so while people have different views and thoughts, they're not relevant to analysis. So we tend to focus more on the things that we have to pursuant to land use ordinances and whatnot.
Of course.
That just takes priority. But there may be a sense that this is a done deal, which it's not, but this is a project the village asked for. And this is a project like the one before it, where we openly advertised and laid out criteria for a project just like this. Now, of course, we couldn't envision the specific brick and mortar structure that would be there. But yes, this is something that was specifically requested and advertised for, and we have someone who brought forward a proposal that, and I realize people may disagree on this, but it fits what we asked for. So is it a done deal? Of course it's not a done deal. But this is a little different than a situation where someone buys a property and then comes to us and says, hey, right now it's being used as single-family residential, I want to rezone it to something else and put up X, Y, and Z, that we look at our plan and see, does it fit it, and we have our criteria. This is one where we have the comprehensive plan actually identified this as catalyst site number 16 for this kind of development. So we are kind of getting what we asked for, but that doesn't mean it's a done deal, but I understand that folks may view, well, wait a minute, you seem to be very glad you're having this. Well, yes, because we asked for it. When I say we, I mean the community asked for it through the comprehensive planning project that was updated after an extensive amount of time, and we're currently in the process of re-updating it, so that it reflects a vision for the community.
I'd like to have a very brief comment to follow on something that you very often say, Mayor. I think the right answer here is to find an and solution. That all of the concerns that you bring up are legitimate, appropriate concerns, and we need to address those concerns. I don't think the question should be phrased, either approve the building or turn down the building.
I agree.
So finding appropriate solutions to all of your concerns needs to be a high priority. Saying no to the project, that avoids the and. That forces us into an either or. And it's Mayor Tully who often talks about and solutions, and I think that's something we need to focus on here.
And last, just because I wrote down, what's the hurry? I wouldn't say it's a hurry, other than we have an opportunity that's facing us. And it's an opportunity that we openly advertised for, so we obviously want to embrace the opportunity, if it's the right one, and take advantage of it. We've been trying to develop the site for over a decade. So I would actually suggest it hasn't been a hurry, it's been a long time in coming. But just to echo on what Commissioner White said, and the only reason I'm talking so much is I was trying to address some of your questions.
I understand.
And comments. We obviously want to embrace the opportunity that hasn't presented itself in a number of years. So anyway, thank you for your comments. Please
Thank you,
do
Mayor.
send them to us so I can read them all, because I didn't get them all down. And candidly,
It's 4 pages.
Well, I think we can handle that. And some are questions which I think we can legitimately get answers to. And some of the details about the criteria of how the parking traffic study were done, that should be easily determined. Other things I realize are more advocacy than they are questions.
They are.
I think in all due respect, you'll understand we'll focus on the questions.
Of course.
The advocacy was duly noted.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you for
your time.
coming down again, and obviously you put a lot of work into those comments, and they're appreciated. Thank you. Thank you. Other questions or comments from members of the audience? Good evening, welcome.
Hi, my name's Marianne Badkey. I live at 5408 Carpenter, about 2.5 blocks away from where this will end up, if it ends up there. Ditto on Diane's comments. So I don't have a whole lot to say because she pretty much covered everything. But I do want to say that I realize, for the village, it's a financial, brings in revenue and whatnot, but I do think it's too large and imposing for that site. I think I read in one of the documents how it would embrace, I think that was the term, embrace, and I think it's more like, overpower you. Because if you sit in the parking lot over by the subway, I was there for the cruise night about a week or so ago. It's going to be like a little canyon in there between the Marquee on Maple and that building. That parking lot, like I said, and if that's the way you're going to continue, then it's just going to become a bunch of canyons, and particularly for Maple Street, that's just not the way it should go. The other is, in this building, you're talking about offering a pet spa and yoga and exercise rooms and whatnot. There's a dog spa already in town. There's 2 yoga studios around the corner. There's exercise places. So you're not encouraging these people that are going to be living there to go out and use the facilities in town. So I found that kind of counterproductive. I don't know if you're aware of those types of businesses in town. Since I frequent almost all the stores in town.
I am.
I'm aware of all that.
We are.
Again, traffic, I live on Carpenter Street. It's become, sometimes it's a racetrack. My neighbor was just asking about, wondering if we can get speed bumps on Carpenter because people come flying through there. If people are going to be backed up on Maple, they're just going to be using some of those side streets. And I realize I chose that street. I knew where, that might be an issue, but this type of development is not going to help that. Again, in light of the other projects that are going up on Rogers, across from the post office, by the train tracks, can you really say we need to double the apartments within this short period of time? I find that really hard to believe, but the other is the waste of the tearing down that Severs building, and I realize it's his option to sell to whomever he wants to, but I just think that building really adds to the character of what's going on Maple. Not, it's not big and imposing, it fits right in. And the other is just, just because you can build a building that's 70 feet high and that goes right up to the lot line, doesn't mean you should. Just because you can jump in the lake doesn't mean you should. And the other is, there's a big irony here for me on this. You're willing to double the density for this building, and yet when I asked about, on my lousy little 50-foot wide lot, if I get a new garage, I have to move it 3 feet because it's not 5 feet from the lot line. That's going to be harder to pull in. I realize I could apply, for a variance, but I'm going to have to jump through hoops for 3 feet. That's going to make my life harder getting in and out of my, little 50-foot wide lot. Garage has been there probably 30, 40 years. House has been there 76. So a bit of an irony on you're just going to go, oh, okay, double the density. That's okay, you can build up to the minimum line. You can have these buildings so close, and yet the average citizen has to jump through hoops to not have her garage moved 3 feet.
Thank you for your comments. In all fairness, those are two different zoning.
I know, I'm just saying it's an
And
irony.
You have to follow the rules in every class, and
I know, but
you
it's
go
an
from one
irony of
zoning classification to another, and the rules change.
But it's ironic.
They're jumping through the hoop of going through this whole process.
Well, yeah,
I mean, so they have to ask for exceptions.
Yeah.
There's a fair amount of hoops the gentleman behind you are jumping through as well.
Yes, I know, I'm just saying it's rather ironic, so.
Thank you for your comments, appreciate it,
Bye.
and for coming again. Good evening, welcome.
Thank you. My name is Larry Benarowitz, and I live at 5329 Main Street in Downers Grove. Thank you very much, Commissioners and Mayor, for listening to my concerns. My concerns are quite similar to some of the other ones, but again, concerning parking. You look at the numbers, 10 parking spaces for 115 units. They have 162 inside covered parking. Way inadequate. That's one of the things. I've circulated a petition amongst the residents at 5329. It's the Morningside building, and I want to submit that to.
Yeah, please do.
Yeah.
We had that too.
I think Mr. Popovich has responded to quite a few of the concerns that we had at the other meeting, the Planning Commission's meeting, the Trammell Crow Group. Excellent company to associate with and work with. But I think being at the Morningside building, it's a recent move for me. I've only been there about a year. But we have off-street loading and unloading. They're planning to have on-street loading before 11 o'clock. When you move into an apartment, you're going to use 4 to 5 hours, even 6 hours to move in as one person, as one unit. And they've got 115 units. Way inadequate. I think they should have that parking in the rear, or unloading and unloading in the rear of the building, off the street. Nowhere is the traffic analyzed, the addition that the Park District plans to use in the Lincoln Center. The Lincoln Center is going to be expanded, and they're going to have expanded activities there and more traffic coming there. What's the third thing? I just identified 3 things. One thing we thought too is they've never addressed in their proposal and stuff how soon the rental units will turn over. I'm anticipating probably 16 to 18 months would be a turnover rate. So, but I'm not an expert. They're the expert in that field. They would be able to answer that question better. But if you talk about 115 people renting, even if they rent 90%, which is a good investment to get 90% rentals and stuff, you're talking about 100 units changing over. And nobody moves December, January, and November. So you're talking about in 9 months, you're going to have 100 units changing. So That's really my concerns. Inadequate parking, way inadequate. Loading and unloading, and having it renters. There is a big need for renters to have a very attractive building. So that does fit with, I guess, their marketing plan. That's all I wanted to say. Thank you very much for listening.
Well, very much, and thank you for coming and speaking. The parking issue obviously is a broader, comprehensive issue the village is very acutely aware of. On the loading and unloading, I know the gentleman behind you, gentleman and lady behind you are listening intently to the comments. If there are any other options that we're exploring with respect to that issue, that might be good. And I thought that was a good question that you asked about what is the experience in terms of in a comparable type of facility, what is the moving in and out activity, and how does that impact a off-street versus on-street type of location for that to happen, and whether there are any other options that might be feasibly explored.
Yeah, those two parking zones that are, or two parking spaces that are designated loading and unloading, that's before 11 a.m. After 11 a.m., they become parked.
I understand. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Good evening, welcome.
Thank you. Christine Martin, 701 Maple Avenue. I would just like to speak on aesthetics, which I usually do. I would like to see for Downers Grove, I'm not meaning to be cynical, I know the building is going to go up. And I understand the TIF, I understand why, though I always go back to the aesthetics of things. I look around Downers Grove, and what I do wish we had as a community is a board, like we have the Planning Commission, zoning, that we have these committees that would say, here are the guidelines that you follow for the aesthetics of the community. When you have brick-lined streets that have older homes on them, and even if some of those older homes have to be taken down, there should be some committee that says, you cannot stick an enormous garage on the front lawn of this lovely tree-lined brick historic street, built to the aesthetics of the neighborhood. This, to me, falls within that category. If you look around downtown Downers Grove, there are still buildings there that do have character to them. And so I don't mean offense when I say, if you build 1,000 buildings in 3 years, there's not a lot of character going on there. McDonald's has thousands of buildings all over the country and the world. They look the same. And to me, visually, I look at this, and aesthetics to me is important. It keeps character. Character, for me personally, I know it's subjective, is important. And I would love to see Downers Grove do a committee where it's not zoning, it's not planning. There are some guidelines on what gets built and where. Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate your comments, Ms. Martin. And that proposal has come up from time to time, and it's existed in a non-mandatory form in terms of some downtown design specification, actually specification, wrong word, suggestions. Although I will comment, I think most people would probably agree with me that if there's a character to Downers Grove overall, it's probably its eclecticness. We don't have other than certain pockets in certain areas, we don't have a style. It's a very eclectic community, and so that tends to make it a more complicated conversation. I am very glad, third point though, that we are seeing more and more residents embrace the architectural and historic significance of a number of our structures in town and are voluntarily landmarking those, because that's one way that folks can make sure that they keep that going forward for a long time to come. It's all about balance. It's in our motto, preserving the balance between tradition and progress. And we do our best. Sure, I was going to say, before speaking again, I usually like to let other people speak, but if it's...
I just have one comment.
Well, if you say it's okay with me.
One thing I forgot about, both the Marquee on Maple and this building, I know this building is pet friendly. Let's say in both these buildings, half of the people have a dog. That's 75 dogs being walked in the neighborhood. Now, Marquee on Maple might have some green space. So where are the 50 dogs from the Maple and Main going to walk and do their business? And I love pets. I like to see my neighbors walk their dogs. I don't mind them walking in my property, but I really don't want to see another 50 or 75 dogs. Are they going to go in the park in back by Lincoln Center where there's
Constitution Park?
Children playing, and so that's to be kind of a big concern. And I know a lot of younger people do buy dogs or do have dogs something I didn't want as a...
Right now, all the cat owners are highly offended that you're leaving them out.
I'm a cat owner. Cats, and where's all the cat litter going to go? Because it goes somewhere. So, I mean, I think that's a real valid concern, it's to have, where are all these dogs going to walk and do their business? So,
Again, I'm not going to sit here and try to pretend that I have a specific answer.
But I think for
You mentioned
people-
Constitution Park, there's also Official Park. There are
right, but again, another 50 to 75 dogs or more, doing their business in the parks or on people's lawns or on the village
I'm sure they will all be
streets.
responsible pet owners.
Well, urine has to go somewhere, and it can't be picked up.
Duly noted, thank you. Other questions or comments from the audience? Good evening, welcome.
Hi, thank you. Thank you for having me. I'm Gail Bishke. I live at 5329 Main Street in Morningside Square. And I just have two kind of practical things. We have garbage pickup twice a week, and we have 38 units. So for 115 units, they're going to have a lot of garbage pickups. It's a lot of garbage trucks that are going to be blocking the street. The other thing is the water and the water runoff, the kind of ditch, I don't know what it's called, in front of our building, was designed to take the overflow water from the roof of our building. And it's gotten so much worse. We have standing water for days and days and days. Now that's mostly down, and there's this green scum on the top. And I have allergies, and of course mold is my worst allergy, which makes it hard for me. I face the front of the building to sit on the balcony because, 10 feet away, there's all this green fuzzy stuff. So water is an issue, and it didn't sound like from the meeting last week there was any plan for them to do something for managing the water. And I'm not at all knowledgeable about water and how that works, but I'd like that to be looked at so that
Sure.
we're going to be directly south of that, and we're going to, be affected by that.
Sure. Fair question, and obviously, I think it was mentioned earlier, that's one of the trifecta of issues that always come up is stormwater. And clearly, as with any project, there are stormwater rules that have to be followed, and that will be something that any petitioner would have to work with the village and sometimes even the county with respect to making sure that stormwater regulations are appropriately addressed. And sometimes there's a general plan, and then you get more specifics as you deal with the issues in the field. But yes, that is something that is a very high concern to this council, as we'll be talking a little bit later tonight about referenda questions put out to the community about how we can best fund stormwater issues in existing situations.
Well, I'm glad to hear that, because I got the sense last week that they didn't need to do anything, that there wasn't going to be an issue, and that
It's
they didn't
never
see it as
not
an
an
issue.
issue.
Good, thank you.
It's always an issue. But thank you. Hello again, Mr. Roble.
Hi, Mr. Mayor, Councilman. Bill Roble, 7800 Queens Court. I've lived in Downers Grove 47 years, and I've seen a lot of changes. And my concern is that, as you commented just a few minutes ago, the historical image of Downers Grove is changing. And when I first came to Downers Grove and we went walking downtown, there was a cute little gas station, just like kind you see on Route 66. Side saddle on the corner there, and people would buy gas, and it was just like hometown USA. That's obviously was compromised when they decided the gas station was useless, and the village said, wow, we don't have enough green space downtown. We got a cemetery, but that's not considered green space. And they said, yeah, what we need is a little green space. We could put a nice sign on the side of the building there as you come from the south that says, welcome to downtown Downers Grove, your friendly tree city, Well, through the advent of the parking deck, that was put aside and became a parking lot. And it's been a parking lot since the construction of the downtown parking deck. So be it. And the young lady who spoke about her spice shop, she's right on target with the ability for people to park. I personally live south of 75th Street. I always say I'm the tail of Downers Grove. You see the little brown dog with the little white spot on the tip of his tail. That's where I live. And I find that I'm reluctant to shop and dine downtown because I don't want to jockey around. I'm getting to be, to the point where I can't walk for 3 blocks. I'd like to park somewhere near. None of the restaurants offer me parking right next to them. The valet parking, but I don't like the valet park. You go to the library, sometimes I don't even go to the library anymore because I go to Willowbrook or to Woodridge because they have parking. You fight with the people who are having lunch, dinner, and so forth for parking in the library parking lot, plus the people who are at the library. And then, you've got to forget the impact of our friends on the Burlington Railroad. I've stood in line to cross the tracks for 10, 15 minutes. One's going east and one's going west. That impacts the downtown area. The traffic backs up past Maple to go across the tracks. And it goes past, by the church over there on Main Street. I try to avoid that. If I really got time, I go down through downtown, through the underpass on Belmont. But I'm saying, being a South Downers Grove person, I've got the shopping center on 75th and Lamont. I've got Woodridge. I mean, there's alternatives that parking doesn't seem very important, but it does drive away customers from the people here trying to have a business here. That's my only concern. Oh, the other major concern was, everybody talks about this and that and the other thing, but I'd like to remind you that I hope the developer and people who are working on this with the developer have negotiated some kind of impact fee. I remember when what they call it, Arcadia on the Green, they probably destroyed Washington Street and other developments like this that have heavy concrete trucks, brick trucks, all these other things going on. There's an impact fee. That should be shared very generously with the developer. That's what I wanted to call your attention to. As a taxpayer, and you got a TIF district and all that, but at the same time, by accommodating these grandiose ideas of the redevelopment and bigger and better and all this stuff, there are impact fees that are absorbed by the village, and they should be shared very generously with the developers. That's my only other comment.
Thank you for your comments, Mr. Roble.
I don't think anybody talked about that.
We do have impact fees, and they're usually built into every redevelopment project.
Okay.
Thank you. Good evening, welcome.
Thank you. My name is Sally Conness. I've lived in Downers Grove many years. I have a business downtown. I'm also a member of the Downtown Management Board, but tonight I speak just only on behalf of myself. And the way the project is presented by Trammell Crow, it sounds fabulous. And when you first look at it as a business owner, I think, hot dog, more customers, great. And they're going to be rich customers because they're paying, $1,500 to $4,000 a month. That's even better, that's great. But I think you have to think about it a little bit longer than that and not just look at it on the face of it and think about, well, what other kinds of impacts is this project going to have on the downtown, Downers Grove in general? And I worry, my concerns are, I worry about these more than one construction project going on with several buildings going up at one time, and I think that could have a devastating effect on the businesses downtown. We may not be great revenue producers for the village, but I do think we're a great selling point for the village. And I think we are in the downtown, and the atmosphere down there is a big reason why a lot of people want to live here. In fact, I think Trammell Crow even agrees with that. So I think
few would argue with you on that.
Yeah, right. So I think we should be considered. And so I think I'm just asking that all of you please consider the businesses downtown, consider preserving the character of the downtown. That's a big building, but to me it has no charm. There's nothing special about it. It just looks like every other big apartment building that you see everywhere else. So I don't think there's anything distinguishing about it. And so if that's the gateway to our town, I'm disappointed. And using your own word balance, I think, maybe we can find some balance here, where maybe, it can still happen, something can happen on that corner, but maybe find a way to compromise something that preserves the architectural integrity of the downtown, the character of the downtown, the charm of the downtown, something that maybe won't be so devastating to downtown businesses, perhaps timing-wise. I get that it's I get the money thing. I understand that, but I think there's a lot more to consider than just that. I'm also not quite convinced that the building will fill with people who want to pay, $1,500 for a tiny, tiny little apartment. I think the fact is, most of the high-earning, people in their 30s still want to be in the city. Unless they're married and they have kids, then they're ready to move out here. And if you can afford, $4,000 a month, even $2,000 a month, you're probably going to think about buying a house out here and not renting a studio apartment or a two-bedroom apartment. So please consider all those things. That's all I ask. Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate your comments, and we will consider them. Other questions or comments from the audience? Good evening. Welcome.
Good evening. John Plivka, 6016 Washington. I may have to ask Manager Fieldman if I'm correct on something here. There was a graphic in the manager's report that
You can ask me, and I'll probably get it wrong, but that's okay.
In the manager's report that will be presented later, it showed how much the developments that are in progress or going to be built contribute to the TIF. I believe that Marquis on Maple will contribute more to the TIF than this project.
I don't recall, but
Marquis on Maple is less than half as large as this. So the density of this project doesn't mean that it's going to contribute more. Which leads me to another thought, and this was all prior to the meeting when I caught this online. There should be another column in the manager's report that shows what the liability is for the rest of the village to pay for services that these residents and businesses are getting because their tax money is going to the TIF. Correct?
not exactly.
No, so they're paying, the TIF money is paying for regular village services along with the TIF payments.
I'll be happy to discuss it with you offline. It's a little more complicated than that.
All right. Parking and traffic. We'll just start with 7A of last week's meeting. One of the commissioners said that parking studies are marginal at best. This developer and traffic consultant would have us believe that 115 units plus 54 units next door will have no effect on traffic. 94 trains cross Main Street each day on average. Traffic backs up well past Maple Avenue during the rush hour. One car sitting on Maple Avenue will stop all westbound traffic. That car is going to make a right turn and it can't because of traffic. And I kind of believe that you're going to pass this anyways. I think that one of the requirements should be the developer putting in a dedicated right turn lane so that westbound traffic can continue through. Along with traffic, representative from Trammell Crow felt that people who wanted to stay in the village would live in this building, people looking for housing in the village would live in this building, and people working in the area would live in this building. That leads me to believe that these people are going to be using their personal cars to get around instead of walking to the train to go downtown. That may happen, but from what he said, I think that we're going to have a lot more traffic than the study. And I ask you to remember one study that came before you that said this is going to screw up traffic in town. You'll never see a study like that because that consultant will never get another job. This will definitely change the character of both Maple and Main Street. You can expect further projects of this size to be built, come forward on Maple Avenue. Originally, now this was never intended to be a parking lot, this land that we're going to sell. It was intended to be a park. I would be satisfied with a park there. I would be satisfied with something that's a combination of a park and parking. But this project is just too big for that site. And I think we're going to have a discussion here on another topic in a little while.
Thank you for your comments. And just two things on the park usage. I remember that discussion very distinctly back when it was had. At first, it wasn't really in the mission of the Village of Downers Grove to operate parks. We have a separate elected body in the village called the Downers Grove Park District, and that is their mission to have both active and passive use parks, and obviously that's a tremendous asset to our community. But I remember the discussion back then was that's not within the mission of the Village of Downers Grove proper. And second of all, being in the downtown and being in a TIF district, this goes back to the question about underutilized. That would be very underutilized in terms of a contributing asset to both the downtown and to the TIF. And just sharing what the discussion was at the time.
Just one follow-up. It seems to be continuing excuse that a previous council decided something, or there was a study done years ago. And this doesn't have anything to do with previous council. This is going to be your decision. It's going to be your legacy, what happens on this corner. This council may be remembered for a number of things. I think the last council is going to be remembered for Marquee on Maple and the stormwater utility. So this is going to be your legacy issue.
Understood, and actually it does go back to several prior councils. And at least one person who was on that council at the time, it's not an excuse. I was there, made the decision then. I'm being, if anything, consistent. I'm not offering it as an excuse. I'm offering it as a strategy and a plan that was adopted some time ago, and it carries through to today. Doesn't mean things can't be changed, but again, it was just simply sharing what the discussion was at the time. Please. Welcome.
Hi there, Kathy Nybel, 5253 Blodgett. I had a little list of things, but everyone has taken most of the things on my list, and that's good, so we're probably thinking in the same way. But there is one item that hasn't come up yet, and that's the price that the lot is going to be sold for on the corner. When I looked it up in the report, it's going to be sold to Trammell Crow for $126,000. Now, those of us who live in Downers know that a prime retail commercial corner is worth more than $126,000. I don't know how you got that number, but as a taxpayer, I would like you to get the best deal possible. These people are going to make millions of dollars off of us. They're going to make millions. I think that that lot is worth more than $126,000. I really do. And I hope that you have an opportunity, or there is some discussion about, making a better deal than 126. To me, it seems like you're giving it away.
Sure, appreciate it. It's a fair question, and some folks have asked that question. Just two things to consider. Number one, this isn't a situation where we put a real estate sign on the corner and ask for somebody to come and buy it. This is being contributed as part of a overall bigger project that has much greater returns to the community than simply the price or the fair market value of that land. I also know, point number two, that there's a property that we have right in the downtown we've been trying to sell for a long time, and we can't get anything close to what anyone would think. I forget what the last offer we had on the Mad Potter building.
The offers are coming in at zero, actually.
Right. Yeah,
with
right.
Requests for TIF assistance.
So the question is not necessarily that there are these very valuable properties that are worth a lot of money. We know of one that's down the street, but nobody's willing to pay anything for it. In fact, they're asking us to contribute towards them to take it off our hands.
Maybe if there was a sign out front, maybe
There's
people
been a
might
sign
have
out
offered.
front for...
No, I mean the one on Main and Maple.
Right. Well, but again, that goes back to my first point, is that this is not us trying to sell this corner for the most we can get for the fair market value. We're actually soliciting this as part of a development. So it's a part of a much bigger picture that has much bigger return in the village than simply the sale price. But fair question, you're not the first person who's asked that question.
Well, I figure with all these additional people, there's going to be a real hit to our services, whether it's police, fire, schools, anything, I mean, snow plowing, whatever, because all additional cars. So it just seems like it should be a little bit more.
Fair question, and there are impact fees that are paid by any development that comes in terms of the Park District and the schools. They end up writing checks.
Thank you.
Thank you. Good evening, welcome.
Good evening. My name is Charlotte Luizzi, and I would like to ask, why is the closing of the property needed before September 9th? Can you address all these questions and concerns before September 19th or 9th? Let's see, 9th. You said we're not in a rush, but it sounds like, and I think this is why people think it's a done deal.
Sure, I said, actually what I said was, we're not rushing because this is a project that we've been pursuing in some form or shape for a decade.
Okay, you also
This is the
said...
second opportunity that we've had, but there are some timetables when you're dealing with land use issues, that under our ordinance and statutes, we have to proceed in a certain time frame. But it's not a rush, that's just what we always do. If this was somebody who was asking for...
Well, we've just really found out about this maybe the last month or so, and you also mentioned that people have asked for this. Who are the people, the residents, the store owners, who have asked for this project?
This council and multiple prior councils. There was a prior project that I think was mentioned in the history that was proposed. It was not the same. I'm not suggesting it was the same project. That had been, I think, actually approved.
Yes.
I think it was approved. So councils where I would say at least half the people up here weren't even here yet were promoting actively the development of that corner to a mixed-use project. Also, the comprehensive plan identifies it as a catalyst site, and the comprehensive plan was something that was, Commissioner White, you can tell me over what period of time the comprehensive plan was updated after 45 years? And there was a lot of public input into that, a lot of community discussion. I think that process lasted about a year.
Roughly a year.
Roughly a year.
Okay, I had no idea.
No, that's-
I thought this
sure.
was a new thought.
The proposal is recent in that this specific manifestation is new, but having a mixed-use facility on this corner, the community and members of this council, both current, past, and former, have been talking about it for a long time. And I'm only sharing it with you because it doesn't surprise me that obviously you have much more important things to do in your life than keep track of everything we're doing. This is something we've been talking about for some time.
Okay, thanks.
You're welcome. Thank you for asking. I'm sure you're not the only person with that question. Good evening, welcome.
Good evening. My name is Michael Casa. I'm President and CEO of the Downers Grove Economic Development Corporation. Our office is located at 5159 Mokel in downtown Downers Grove. Mr. Mayor, earlier this evening you indicated that we should always strive for balance, and so let me offer a different perspective tonight so you can have some balance. I'm here tonight on behalf of the Economic Development Corporation in support of this project. In 2011, as you've heard, the village adopted a comprehensive plan, which is the roadmap for the town. When I started in this job, the committee that Commissioner White chaired was just about done with their work. When it was completed, I read it cover to cover. I share it with my clients. When people ask, well, how do people find out that something could be for sale or could be developed, it's because Linda Coonsey and I share that information with developers and brokers and others. I will tell you, in my 24 years in this business, it's one of the best comprehensive plans I've ever encountered. It's a great model for other communities. As Mr. Popovich indicated, the northeast corner of Main and Maple is identified in that plan as a catalyst site, And the plan says, it's been like this for years, the plan says that the village-owned surface parking lot on that corner is a key site for infill development, which would create a strong presence as a gateway into the downtown. So this is not something new. In addition to the comprehensive plan, the attraction of upscale transit-oriented developments is a component of the Economic Development Corporation's strategic plan. Trammell Crow is one of the world's premier multifamily developers. They basically set the standard. They're a well-respected leader in this industry. Throughout the United States, when you have conferences and panels that talk about multifamily development, there's almost always someone from Trammell Crow who's on that panel. I'm excited about the retail component of this. If this project is approved, I look forward to working with Downtown Management and CBRE, the world's largest brokerage firm, on the leasing of that retail space. But the biggest reason to be supportive of this project, and I realize there's a lot of issues that you're all going to be considering. I commend the council, the staff, the businesses, the residents for raising these issues. They're important. But the biggest reason to support this project is that it will bring more residents to our downtown with disposable incomes, who can shop, who can dine, and who can support our businesses throughout the community. So on balance, I believe it's a good project for our downtown and one that does comply with our comprehensive plan. Thank you very much.
Thank you for your comments. Other questions or comments from members of the audience? Please. Good evening, welcome.
Thank you. My name's Joe Ralston. I live at 435 Grant Street for the past 31 years, so I'm not really in that area, but my problem is more of a general feeling that you really don't care what we as voters and taxpayers care about. Wouldn't something like this be better for like a voter referendum so we could have everybody's input on it? That's it.
I appreciate your comment, and I think I can safely speak on behalf of myself and my colleagues that we do care. There have been a number of situations where we've made adjustments. There was an item on the docket earlier tonight that we decided that after discussion was modified to take into account a number of comments that we received both in favor of and in opposition to, and we tried to achieve that "and" solution. And I just want to reiterate that this has been a community conversation for quite some time, so it even predates the people who are sitting up here. It's just something that's been a vision for that corner for some time, and we have an opportunity before us, and we're glad to have the opportunity to have the conversation. But we are having a conversation and certainly are listening. There are certain things that we have to look at specifically under our rules, under our land use rules for special uses and rezoning, and some things fall outside of that. We have an obligation to focus on the things that fall within those rules. So just because we're focusing on what we have to doesn't mean we're not listening to everything. But we do appreciate everybody coming down, and I think I live closer to this than you do, so certainly I'm very much interested and very much want a quality project that's going to enhance something that's 2 blocks away from me than detract from it. So yes, all these questions and comments are greatly appreciated. I also remember when the Morningside development was first proposed a number of years ago, there were similar questions and comments, and I'm now thrilled that we've had a number of residents here tonight speak who live there. It's sort of an attestation to the success of that project. It's change. We all understand that, and on the one hand, we try to preserve our character, and the other side, we have to we also have to reflect that we need to reinvest in our community in order for it to maintain its economic vitality. That's the way we continue to be a successful community, and I won't even start about the external pressures we have to deal with all the time. But thank you for your comments, appreciate it. Other questions or comments from the audience? Good evening, welcome.
Good evening. I'm Matt Butts of 615 Maple Avenue. I'm a very new resident to Downers Grove, so my wife and I selected our house on Maple Avenue in November of 2015, so we've been there for, 9 months now. And most of my comments have already been addressed, so I'm not going to reiterate those again. But just as an entrance to Maple Avenue, which my wife and I just absolutely loved, which is why we picked our house there. Beautiful historic homes, And even, the thing that struck us was houses that had been redeveloped, to newer buildings had been done in such a style that you didn't instantly notice that it was a brand-new house. There are some in there that, yes, you can tell it's definitely new construction, but a lot of it has really built on the architecture of some of the other houses so that it blends in better. And I understand your point to the eclectic nature of the area, but it just does not seem like that's Maple Avenue to me. If that was somewhere else in the downtown area, I don't think I'd have as much of a aversion to it, but just being the entrance to Maple Avenue as well, just really, it doesn't fit the aesthetics that I associate with Maple Avenue. So regardless of what happens there, I'd just like to say my concern is to make sure that that doesn't take over Maple Avenue, because I think it's one of the best streets in Downers Grove. So making sure we preserve that kind of historic gateway into the city as you go down Maple Avenue. So that was the only new thing I had to add. Thank you very much.
Thank you, and welcome to the community. Other questions or comments from members of the audience? All right, well, let's take a pause, and I don't know if, having heard and thought about it some more, whether my colleagues want to ask more questions and then we allow petitioner and staff to answer them, or should we allow the petitioner to address whatever they wish based on what they've heard? I know there were at least a handful of questions in there. What would everyone prefer to do? If there are burning questions right now, we can ask them, or we can hear further from the petitioner. What would you like to do? Hearing no strong opinion, I'm going to suggest that if the petitioner would like to address any of the questions, entirely up to you, that you've heard from the public, or maybe even as channeled through some of us. That's your prerogative. Otherwise, I'll kick it back to the council for any final questions or comments. We're, again, not taking any action this evening.
I have some comments to make.
Do you want to wait until after you've heard from the petitioner, or want to go ahead and make them now?
Perhaps, maybe I'll...
Nobody's running to the microphone, so go ahead.
Perhaps I could make some comments now, and I mean, petitioner could react to them as well as the public comment. And very brief comments I'll add. I think one point that's been discussed is the demographics. I think that, it's been, and there's been some discussion about whether there's going to be demand and such for this, and I think, I respect the petitioner, and the developer is the expert in it, but I'll just add my 2 cents as somebody who works in the loop, takes the train, and I work with a number of people that are of similar age as me. I'm 27, right? And most people who are in that age range, 20s, early 30s, are perhaps not buying properties as much as they once were, and I think the petitioner did address that. I recently had a friend of mine who was looking for some properties. It's a place to rent in this area. Ended up in Westmont because the amount of stock here in Downers Grove, it was so competitive for rental. Isn't in a position where it wants to buy at this time, and is willing to put up some pretty significant money that in some cases shocked me. But it was just one of those examples that hit really close to home, because it's a guy that's a couple desks away from me at the office. But it's a trend that I see more and more. People looking for some of the amenities and that our community, a smaller community like Downers Grove offers, but also looking for that transportation, looking for that walk to train. So I really do, from my perspective, just an anecdotal perspective, I do see the demand and the demographics. Really, this demand, I think, is there, and I'm pleased to see that we have development. I think it was responding to that overall trend. So I just did want to comment on that from more of a personal level. And obviously the petitioner is more of an expert on broader trends than I am. It's not my business, it's not my area of study, but it's something I do notice from a personal perspective. I think that I appreciate the there's been a lot of concerns, and Mayor, you've mentioned that you've responded to a number of them. And I just, I look at this project as potentially, as a really I really hope this potential project is something that's a real benefit to the community. And I do appreciate the work that was done on a comprehensive plan. I want to note that. I mean, Commissioner White, at the time, chairman of that committee, and the work that they did, I think was really excellent. And I do view this as, especially the use of that corner as a parking lot is certainly not optimal. And if we can, get a high-quality development, that's something I'm looking for. And, obviously want to consider this and think about if there's opportunities to, address some of the concerns without losing some of the really great benefits here. But I just want to throw that all out there.
Thank you, Commissioner. Other comments or questions from Commissioner Jose?
Thank you, Mayor. Just a quick procedural question first. Are we taking item G as well as part of this, the redevelopment and land purchase agreement, or are we going to treat that separately?
I'd be happy to introduce that. It sounds like a lot of the issues have come up sort of in this context already and been addressed by the...
Short answer is no, we haven't introduced it technically, but we could do that quickly if...
I can wait, it's fine, but I do have one.
It's all one item. It's all one item, but I don't think it was
I'd
technically...
rather wait on this, I'll keep that separate for myself, if you're looking for opinions.
Okay.
Like I said, I didn't want to go too far astray.
No. Well, let's see if anybody else has anything else they want to say. I've said way too much already, so I'm not saying anything. Please.
Just a quick, I just want to say, I do like the development. I think it's a great improvement for that area. However, I think the concerns are real, especially for the people who own businesses in town. I think the traffic concerns are very real. We want to bring this kind of development to our town to make it look better, to have people live here. That's really important. But we certainly don't want to put businesses out of business. I mean, the woman who owns the spice business, she really depends on those parking spaces, and that's a real concern. So I think that those concerns need to be addressed. Some people have concerns about the aesthetics of the building to make it look more in line with what is already in the downtown area. That could be something to take into consideration. I think parking is a real problem. I think everyone would embrace this if the parking issue was gone. The parking could stay and the building can be there, it would be perfect, all around perfect. But, so I think it's really important that you address those concerns of the people who spoke here this evening. That's very important. But I like the look of the building. I think it's going to add a whole lot to the downtown area. We want to have people live here. We want to have businesses come to our community. Perhaps we shouldn't have another yoga studio or a pet business. That may put the business that's already in downtown out of business. And we certainly don't want to do that. But do we want to develop? Yes. Do we want progress? Yes. But I think the concerns are real, and I would like to see you address some of those concerns, before we move forward with this project. That's it.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Jose and Commissioner Waldeck.
Thank you, Mayor. I'll confine my questions and comments to everything but the redevelopment. One quick question for the petitioner. A question was raised about garbage pickup. Could you tell me about how you envision that going on? How many times per week? How many trucks? That sort of thing.
Good evening. My name is Johnny Carlson with Trammell Crow, and thank you for your time this evening. I just addressed some of the deliveries and trucks that would be happening. We have a compactor on site, so I don't know a lot of the other buildings in the area if they have that, but that would also compact the garbage to smaller amounts and less pickups per day. So we're paying for that on the front end of the project, and it would be very variable on really the demand. Obviously, during a lease-up, there'll be more because there's more people moving in, but after that, it'll level off. To answer another question that also kind of molds into that is really the amount of renewals. So we're seeing a very big amount of renewals in our Glenview and down our Park Ridge projects. So people usually would underwrite 60% of the people renew, 40% move out. We're seeing that higher from a renewal factor. So the amount of move-ins are very minimal. It's 2 to 3 per month we envision. And this is really not a big moving truck pulling up. These units are average size of 866 square feet. So this is a box truck or friends and family moving in and very quickly in and out, and that is regulated by our on-site staff. So hopefully that addresses your concerns, but that's really how we would manage that in a management side.
Thank you.
Yep.
With regard to the project as a whole, I think Commissioner White said it right earlier about trying to find the "and" solution. Obviously, parking is a concern downtown. It has been for years, and it will continue to be. And I think we're being quite vigilant about it. I know staff is, and this is something we'll continue to work on, as is as are the traffic issues. With regard to parking, I don't know off the top of my head whether there are any 15-minute parking spots along that stretch of Main Street, and I'd be curious to know if there are, and if there aren't, I think we should consider putting one there. Is there one right there?
There's one right between Valley Dwell and Cleaners.
Okay.
Not that I've ever parked there.
Thank you for that. With regard to, one of the other projects, or one of the other parcels was brought up, the Grove in Maine, the canyon, I think it was described as, that would exist after the construction of this building. That's actually Catalyst Site 15 in the comprehensive plan, and I'm paraphrasing now, but from the plan, it's referred to as underutilized, a one-story building and neighboring surface parking lot that provides a redevelopment opportunity for a stronger relationship to the historic building pattern of downtown. That is to say, we'd prefer not to have that canyon there. Looking at the nuts and bolts of it, it seems to me that the Build 2 piece of the zoning code is met. They've met the parking requirements. They're under the height limit. And the one question remaining is density. And I think it seems to be something we keep coming back to, and perhaps it's something that we should more strongly consider with regard to changes to the code. I know we've got comprehensive plan changes and zoning code changes that are in the works. But again, we need to revisit the density to make sure that we're getting the types of projects that we're advertising for and that we understand what it is we're advertising for. The building, in terms of the size and scope of it, absolutely fits what we're advertising for. If the number of units is going to be an issue moving forward for additional developments, I think that's a larger conversation we need to have with the community, and I hope we will soon. Thanks, Mayor.
Thank you. Commissioner Waldeck?
Thank you, Mayor. This being a workshop, I hit on a number of things as I was looking through. I believe it was a 266-page item, if I recall. And there were comments made that, this could be rushed through and it's already approved. And I think it's far from it. At least for myself, there are a lot of pros and cons to this project. And quite honestly, I haven't made a decision yet. Some things that I do know, I jotted some things down before the meeting tonight, and the public comment really didn't surprise me. There was one new item in there, and that had to do with the handicap parking. That concerns me, the loss of the spaces. In my opinion, this property was never meant to be village-owned as a parking lot. It was supposed to be an investment. It's supposed to be good for business. So, I would not support continuing it as a village-owned parking lot. For $126,000, maybe the businesses could buy it themselves and operate it in some manner. Probably not, and I would also have a hard time, as I say, keeping it as a parking lot, whether it was business-owned or not, but I would at least consider that. As far as the lack of parking goes, I'm on record for many years as opposing developments that consistently come in under parking requirements. And the developer, no matter who it is, always comes in with an excuse. Oh, they're millennials, they don't have cars, they're near the train, they aren't going to have cars, They're older people, they just want to walk around town, they don't need to drive anywhere. You know, I mean, every excuse under the book to cut down on parking spaces. And I've been complaining about that for years, and it's beginning to come to a head. You know, we're actually getting a little more public comment about a development and parking. Unfortunately, if we can continue in this manner, businesses are going to be wanting to scream, as they did for parking deck 1, they'll be pushing for parking deck 2, and I don't see that coming anywhere near in the future, considering the financial challenges that the village will, you know, that we currently have and that we will have. So I don't see a second parking deck coming around. So I'm glad to see the you know, the residents coming up with complaints about the parking. Except, okay, and I do have a problem with the way this development came through as a planned unit development. It seems almost every time there's an apparent want, and it fails to meet zoning standards, we just create a planned unit development, a PUD, and that annoys me. It's more of a recognition of a failure to zone properly, or more scary, zoning to accommodate developers. And it can be a good tool, but I fear it's much too frequent and an easy way out. So I'm not really a fan of PUDs. Is there any, and now we get to another one, is there any surprise that the petitioner's own traffic study found that the impact on traffic would be, and somebody said there would be no impact? No, technically, I think in the material it says minimal. Now, who could see that coming? We should look at this process, or just charge a fee in lieu of, because the process is broke. I mean, how often does a developer's traffic study person come back with something negative? And I think that's a process that I think we need to look at and change. Another shocker was that the neighbors at the Marquee on Maple are complaining about the traffic impacts. Also other density and all the things that were thrown at them against that development, they are throwing at their neighbors. It's kind of interesting. It's the pot calling the kettle black. Okay, I'll get to it here. Let's see. The other thing that I think is wrong with the process, and it was brought up by our first commenter, was that notice to property owners 250 feet. And I think we need to change that in the business district, and maybe some other places, because we need to address and change that. Many times the needs of the businesses and the needs of the owners are quite different. And so if you're just notifying the property owners, the businesses that are mostly affected may not get notice of it at all, or they get it too late to respond. So I think we need to change that process. And I realize this doesn't address this particular issue, but like I say, it's a workshop.
As long as you clarify.
Yes, and I promise to keep my comments to about half of what yours were, Mayor. One of the issues we consider is property values, and what I feel is that this development will improve the value of the property, and it'll help the village taxpayers. So there's a big financial concern here. It's a continuation or beginning of Main Street, but unlike the Marquee on Maple, we are not tearing down a historic landmark. The impacts going east on Maple have already been affected by the Marquee on Maple. This is to the west and on Main, so there should be no additional impacts on property values provided this building maintains occupancy at projected rates. However, I don't think this particular development will be an attractive gateway that we've always wanted. It has been vacant, so one has to balance the gains with the potential losses. Side note, on page 287 of the material, the packet material, the draft minutes for the Plan Commission had said that Some commissioners asked questions of the material. The minutes say that staff, Stan Popovich, answered. It'd be nice to have, when you're looking at the Plan Commission minutes, that it just doesn't say commissioners asked questions and Stan answered them. I'd like to know the questions, I'd like to know the answers. Fortunately, some of those answers were buried in the materials, so I got the answers, but, when you have that in the minutes, it should be more clear. So, anyway, I too wish that this project would be much smaller. I appreciate the residents' comments and emails, and I have made no decision as yet, so this isn't a march to the sea. And I do intend to keep an open mind on this, so thank you.
Well, I certainly hope that, thank you, Commissioner, I certainly hope that General Sherman has nothing to do with what we're talking about here tonight. Other questions or comments before we introduce item G? Please.
First, I want to say that the redevelopment of the site has been a long-standing goal of the village for a project more or less like this. About 18 months ago, before I was on this council, I stood at that podium and said that I thought the Marquis Maple project was too big, too massive, too large, too imposing. I still think that's true. I also said that the prior council was at a crossroads. They could turn left, they could turn right. That council made a choice. This project is more consistent with the comprehensive plan than the Marquis and Maple project. It just is more consistent. This is an easier project to approve than the Marquis and Maple project was. And we can talk about knocking off 2 floors hypothetically, but it doesn't change anything because they'll be next to a taller building. I believe, looking at the pictures, the 2 buildings side by side are essentially consistent, and that it's not logical to push for a smaller building here, having approved a larger building next door. And it is truly ironic that the Marquis and Maple people are saying this building's too big. Back then, 18 months ago, I said approving the Marquis and Maple would change the fundamental character of the south part of Downers Grove. Okay, that's happened. The fundamental character of Maple Avenue between Main and Washington will be irrevocably changed because of the Marquis and Maple project. I believe this project is consistent with that decision and basically furthers along those plans. These 2 projects together do change the character. We were at a crossroads. That decision was made before I was on council. Let's water into the bridge, stormwater through the culvert. The genie's out of the bottle. We're not putting it back in. Now, that said, first, I need to make this very clear. The phrase that we believe in "and solutions," to my knowledge, is trademarked by Mayor Tully, so I use it with his permission. Okay. The idea, I'll just agree with you more. Every interest, every concern that the owner of the spice merchants made, and some people, are legitimate, valid interests that need to be balanced. I believe it is deeply incumbent upon this council and village staff to do everything we possibly can to meet and satisfy those interests. I don't believe saying no to this petitioner is the right way to go about addressing those concerns. Okay, with the royalty fee due, we need an "and" solution. We need a solution to approve this project and find ways to satisfy the very legitimate concerns that were raised. There's lots of details to be addressed. We need to work with, how they pick up the garbage, where does the water runoff go? They need to comply with all those rules. All of that has to happen. Traffic, safety, congestion, noise, and density are all perfectly legitimate concerns. And we will need to look at, and fortunately, we're in the midst of rewriting the comprehensive plan, and how to mitigate the impact of this building, how to mitigate the impact of the Marquis and Maple building on the surrounding areas, the area south of Maple Avenue, what happens at the northwest corner of Main and Maple. How do we improve the intersection at Washington and Maple? Those are all things that is imperative that the Comprehensive Plan Committee, the Plan Commission, and this Village Council address in the very near future, because this will affect traffic. Now, how much is hard to quantify. That's not a reason to say no, But we need to place this building and the marquee on Maple Building and let another cat out of the bag. Eventually, I see the same argument applying to the property at the corner of Maple and Washington, that a potential developer there could come in with very similar arguments. That's all hypothetical at this point, but that's something that we need to make sure there's a firewall so that Washington, Maine, and Maple become a boundary, in my opinion, for these types of buildings, so that we don't see 70-foot buildings south of Maple Avenue. That's my opinion, and hopefully through the comprehensive plan process, the award-winning comprehensive plan, that we can take those concerns into account, find ways to mitigate traffic, find ways to mitigate safety. But I'm not going to hem and haw and hedge and say I'm not in favor of this. I am in favor of this. I have deep concerns, which I believe will be incumbent upon us to address, but I'm not going to say, I mean, if somebody comes up with some really great arguments I haven't thought of, obviously I'll take them into account, but I'm not going to pretend that, I'm on the fence and I need to think about this some more. I'm actually in favor of moving forward with this proposal. And a final comment about the parking requirements, that's a very real concern, but I think we need to keep in mind that people self-select. The developer has chosen to provide less than 2 parking spaces per unit owner. Any young professional, with his or her significant other, if they own 2 cars, they may very well select themselves out of this building. Because if they don't have if they can't get 2 parking spaces, they'll just look elsewhere. So as a consequence, the people who own one car, couples or friends or roommates, if they have more than 2 cars, they may just pass this building over. And I trust in the professionalism of the developer and their ability to do their market research, that they're comfortable that having those people pass the building over will not negatively impact the business model. That's why I'm less concerned about the lower parking density within the building, because they just won't have those types of tenants want to rent there. The redevelopment, to go back to the very beginning very briefly, the redevelopment of the site fulfills what's been a 5 or more, many years, more than 5 years, plan to redevelop this corner. Is it perfect? Well, I could in my imagination find something that would say, welcome to Downers Grove, but it's plenty good enough, and I have no problem supporting it. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Barnett?
Thanks, Mayor.
We are going to get to G, don't worry.
I think that I'm going to do a little rabbit trail here, because much of what has been brought up as concerns are pretty plain on their face, and my colleagues' suggestions that we look and take those seriously and try and look for opportunities to address them are real, and I would expect nothing less. The development along Maple Avenue is a function of a long-term process. We've talked about that, but 70-foot buildings are in there because that's what our zoning ordinance says. Build to sight lines, build to lot lines are in there because that's what our zoning says. If this sounds like it's repetition, for some of you, David and Greg and Mayor, it is repetition. For others, maybe a little bit less repetition. But there absolutely are situations in town, particularly as it relates to downtown, where our zoning does not meet the expectations of residents. And Bill, when you talk about Washington and Maple, I'm glad there's now at least a second voice talking about that. There are others along Maple as well. And these traffic concerns, these parking concerns are real. Whether they're quantifiable, I mean, look, I live on Maple, it's 8,000 cars a day, I get it. So another 115 cars is statistically insignificant, but it's another 115 cars, and then there's another 115 from the next building and the 3 more buildings downtown. What this is an awesome opportunity for our community. It really is. I'm thankful for this opportunity, because I think it's important for the long-term viability of our downtown to have serious investment in high-density residential living. But that puts a burden on us then that I think we have not to date taken seriously enough as it relates to some of these other sort of ancillary effects of such development, whether they're traffic or they're zoning. We've been talking about maybe getting at some of this for a long time. Now, to be fair, 6 months ago, we said we were going to get into the comprehensive plan, but the clock's still ticking. And I think we kind of study stuff to death. This is a great plan that came forward with a lot of thought. we should go forward with some thoughts of our own, recognizing that these are continuing. They're continuing by design, which is good, but let's not just let them happen to us. Sorry you guys have to sit and hear this. This has nothing to do with you guys. It's an awesome building. And really, it's the kind of thing we want. It's the kind of thing we want downtown. I mean, it's obvious in the comprehensive plan. It's also obvious in the stuff that is brought to us. Mayor, you said we asked for it as a function of our planning documents, and that's true, and that's what we're sort of all hoping for at TCF's site and at the other sites downtown. But then it's our job to get into some of these other issues, and getting into them doesn't mean sit up here and say we take your comments seriously. It means getting into them, figuring out a plan to address them, or say clearly that we think those are casualties of development, which is another possible outcome. So I'm excited about it. I'm thankful you guys are choosing to invest in Downers. I hope others follow your lead. It'd be good for all of us. But let's as a council take this as another sort of cattle prod to get our act together and start addressing some of these traffic things and parking things, meaning more than talking about them.
Sure, and I appreciate those comments, and you brought them up before, and I'm glad you continue to bring them up. The parking is an ongoing challenge in downtown, and we've both talked about it and done things about it, including a 5-story parking deck that we built a number of years ago, which was a big doing something about it. And I realize now folks are, well, we need to do more. Sure, we can discuss in a different context, we're not doing this land discussion, where we have opportunities to do some pretty cool things with multiple use facilities that might address both parking and maybe some other facilities needs that we have. I mean, we can do things if we all get together and are innovative enough to actually take action. It's a conversation I've been having, so I hope there's more voices that will go along with that one too. But yeah, we always address things with parking. We have to deal with the commuter parking, we deal with shopper parking. We built a parking deck, for goodness sakes. Yes, this is a commitment that we've done more than just talk about. We've taken action, and I'm confident we will continue to take action within our available means. And number two, with respect to the zoning, I think we've all said, yes, some zoning needs to be changed in order to deter other types of developments from taking place. The last time we did the zoning map, there were some zoning adjustments that were made over by Prince Pond for exact reason to avoid certain kinds of development from going beyond a certain point. So it can be done and it will be done. We just got to get to it, but we do have a process to follow. And if anything, I know that some of us process and procedure is very, very important, and we have to follow it. But I'm glad you brought it up for me. So anyone, before we go to G, anything else? All right, let's go to item G, so we can actually get what else is before us with respect to this petitioner.
Thank you, Mayor. Item G is the redevelopment agreement for this very development. It's also a land purchase agreement. This development, according to the terms of the sale and the development impacts, generates $1.3 million in revenue for the tax increment financing district in the downtown, from now until that TIF district expires in 6 years. It's important to note that $1.2 million of that $1.3 million impact is from the actual property taxes paid and generated from this development. And the sales price is only $126,000. I wanted to take a minute to explain how that number comes about and where the value-added proposition is. There's certain economics to building and financing these types of buildings, all types of buildings. There's a certain amount a developer can pay for the construction of the building and the financing costs and the raw land costs and the demolition costs, and still get their returns that are required to make sure they actually proceed with the development. It turns out, and as we discussed in the facilities plans of yesteryears, that there's a certain market rate that developers of apartment buildings of this magnitude can pay on a per unit basis. In this case, it turns out to be about $35,000 per unit, or per door, as they say in the industry. So this developer is buying some very nice buildings right next door to our parking lot. The Seavers building, which is not very old at all and in great shape, and a residential building that's also in great shape. These are both high-value properties. So when you put in the factor of about $35,000 per unit for land cost, what's left over after you buy those other two properties is about $125,000, in this case $126,525. The village could actually charge market rate on a per square foot basis for that land. The impact of doing that would be no development occurring, because they wouldn't be able to make their numbers work. And so what the staff does when we analyze this is we don't look at each line item, we look at the overall value proposition to the community, including the financial impact of the TIF. This development has much more financial positive impact than the development that the council approved in 2006. We're also selling the land for less money than we did in that redevelopment agreement. And that is because of the huge tax increment generated by this development that comports with our comprehensive plan. So the idea here is to not maximize any one line item, but to maximize the financial return overall. It's also important to note that the 2011 comprehensive plan and the recommendations that came out of that were done without considering the financial impacts to the TIF. And that was done on purpose. We wanted that committee to look at what are the best land use recommendations, what are the best land use patterns that we have, and then go back and double check to see if it still meets the financial health of the TIF. But what it turns out is that group and the council that approved the comprehensive plan recommended a building just like this. And it actually achieves two things. It achieves the vision of the downtown comprehensive plan almost to a T, and it happens to generate a significant amount of money for the TIF at a time that it is needed. So that is how we came up with the $126,000. We know that it's less than the market value of that property if you were to put a for sale sign on it, yet it generates much more revenue than you could get if you sold it for the market rate. The other key terms of this redevelopment agreement are listed in the staff report. They are pretty straightforward. This is a straightforward land sale deal. The village agrees to sell the land. The developer agrees to build whatever project is approved by the council according to a specific timelines. In the event that the developer does not proceed or start this project, the village has the right to have the property leased back to us at no cost so we can continue to provide interim parking facility for our community if the development does not proceed. If the development does not commence over an extended period of time, then we have the ability, should we choose, to purchase the property back. There are some challenges with that. If we get to that point many years out, the property will have been consolidated into one parcel. It's not three parcels anymore. That's why we received some questions about why isn't it a purchase back at the price we sold it to them. That's because so much value will have been added through the development entitlement process and the consolidation of these lots into a redevelopment parcel that it changes the ability of the developer to actually finance and use the land as collateral. So we did add the protections that if this development does not commence in the short term, it will still remain as a parking asset to our community. There are many other terms and conditions of the redevelopment agreement, should you choose to look at them, and we're happy to answer any questions the council may have.
Thank you. Questions from the council on item 7G, the redevelopment agreement, the redevelopment agreement and land purchase agreement.
Could I comment on it?
Yes.
Thank you. Thanks, Mayor. Manager Fieldman, I appreciate the overview that you had about this whole bottom line piece that we're looking at more than one line item. We're looking at the overall picture, and I think that's appreciated, and I understand and agree with that. My question is, the sale of the village-owned land will go to the TIF and not to the general fund?
That is correct. All the revenue from this project, including the sale, will go into the downtown TIF fund.
Okay, is that a requirement that it go to the downtown TIF fund, or is it?
The land sale is not required to go into the downtown TIF fund. The property taxes generated as the development proceeds is required to go into the downtown TIF fund.
Okay. If there's excess money in the TIF fund when it expires, what occurs at that time?
If there's a surplus or a balance in the TIF fund at the time of retirement, that money is distributed to all of the taxing bodies that are located within the TIF, prorated based on their share of the overall tax rate.
Thank you.
Other questions on item 7G? Commissioner Jose?
Thank you, Mayor. I wanted to thank Manager Fieldman for the explanation of why it would be a fair market value as opposed to what the purchase price is. Currently, if we exercise the option to purchase it back. That said, I'm still not comfortable with it. if it's 126.5, it ought to be 126.5. And if the project's not going up the way it was supposed to, then it ought to be 126.5. And perhaps some additional argument would sway me, but that's a sticking point for me right now.
That repurchase agreement is for all 3 parcels.
That was going to be my next question. Okay.
Because at that point, they will have been consolidated into one lot and collateralized as part of the financing, with the value added being the entitlement process that has already, been zoned properly. So then it would be up to our council, if we got in a position where 5 years out, the property has been subdivided and no construction has proceeded at all, that would trigger our ability to come back to them with an option to purchase it. That would probably be coupled with some sort of RFP for another development. And frankly, in my experience, if a developer of the status of Trammell Crow can't make a site work, it has to be for overall general economic conditions that are not germane to the site. They'd be hitting all developers, such as the Great Recession.
I think you swayed me there. Nice job. I'd just like to point out that, in addition, that the impact here on the TIF, I think, is tremendous. I mean, I can recall the initial discussions after joining the council that we were looking at an awfully large potential hole, and given the projects that have been approved over the last several years and the impact that we expect them to have, that provided everything goes as projected, that hole is gone. You've got Marquis on Maple, 922 Warren, Main and Maple. It's good for the taxpayers of Downers Grove, plain and simple. Thanks, Mayor.
You're welcome. Well, just to finish up, the reason being is because there's debt that has to be retired, and when the time comes due, if it's not retired through the TIF revenue that's generated, it's going to have to come from somewhere else, and that's why this is good for the citizens of Downers Grove. We don't want it to come from somewhere else. We want it to come from what was originally intended when the TIF was formed, which was through redevelopment within the boundaries of the tax increment financing district that is in downtown. Commissioner Waller.
And somewhere else is property tax.
Yeah, somewhere else is the entire village, the property taxes. There was a comment before about why the closing is what it is, and I think that had something to do with our process of having a first reading tonight, supposedly voting on it next week. Anything could have happened here tonight. We could have tabled it, could have done a number of things, but anyway, under the normal circumstances, we would have a first reading tonight, we'd vote on it next week, and then you're looking for a closing date. And everybody needs to get their numbers together, so it's important to have a closing date. But that, as people who buy real estate, especially myself, I actually made a purchase recently. Closing dates are kind of fluid. You get the numbers together, and if things don't work out, you change the date. So it's all part of the process, and it wasn't meant to be that this is a done deal. Just a quick comment on that. I know regarding the fair market value, if it needs to be renegotiated, the clause should establish that the fair market value should be no lower than the purchase price. So I at least want $126,000 back. And I know, 5 years out, it should be a heck of a lot more. We're talking, consolidated lots and that. But I just would feel more comfortable if we could at least be sure to get our original price back. And I know that we also have the first option to buy it back until there is substantial completion. And substantial completion is what would you call it, a fungible legal term? I don't know exactly what point you get substantial completion, but hopefully by that time, we would be far enough along where we really wouldn't want to get back in the real estate business that way.
Right, and I think that's kind of the point, because if it goes forward, we will have the cash. You'll have the 126.5.
Right.
It's whether you want to get the property back, that's the question, of what you would have to pay for it, if you wanted it back.
We'll make
You'll have the money.
Mr. Fieldman a landlord. Anyway, I would just I would prefer to see that in the contract overall, that we at least get that amount of money back. But anyway, that's all I have.
I'm not following.
Yeah, we get the
Get the property back.
What you would be asking for the clause that says that we could buy the property back for a fixed price.
126.
But that's complicated by the fact that it won't be that parcel anymore.
Right. We should do better.
Other questions or comments? On G. All right, no further questions on G. Oh, yes, thank you for reminding me. Yes, thank you, I appreciate that. Any questions or comments from the audience with respect to item 7G, which is just the redevelopment land purchase agreement?
Bill Robles, 7800 Queens Court, Downers Grove. On this matter, it's particularly interesting to me because I have almost total recall on the development of Arcadia on the Green. If you go back that far, some of you would do that. I remember, as a representative of the Downers Grove Watch, sitting at the desk in Village Hall, at the desk of Assistant Village Manager David Fieldman, and questioning the integrity and the judgment of dedicating the Fannie Mae property, Johnson Printers, the parking lots, and all the property that now is occupied by Arcadia on the Green. And he had a crystal ball at the same time. And he looked in his crystal ball, and he said to us, "This is the best investment we ever made. This developer and what we're doing, we're giving away $800,000 worth of that we paid for this property. And we're going to get an 18% return on our investment." When the project was underway and was finished, the economy went, I think it took them 10 years to get property rented and so forth, where we got a return of tax dollars on our investment. I think in that case, the crystal ball wasn't as crystal as you thought. Now, I see here David looking at the crystal ball again. Obviously, he's a student of business and politics and the world situation. He paints a very nice picture where we're going to get all this money for the TIF. God forbid, if it rains and storms, so forth and so on, where the conditions change. You know who's going to be whose skin is in the game? Taxpayers. David and village staff, I'd like to make investments using somebody else's money, make my projections based upon someone else's money, because I don't have any skin in the game. If somebody else, it's not my skin, somebody else's skin gets burned, c'est la vie. I just go along doing my thing. So that's what I want to call your attention to. This all sounds good, but it's textbook stuff.
I appreciate the trip through time, except problem is that the debt was already expended in the downtown for all the reconstruction and other things that took place, and it has to be paid off. We're not taking on any new debt here. The taxpayer's under the hook. If this doesn't pan out, turn out the return, we're no worse off than we are right now.
Yeah, if you don't get the revenue for it.
Well, but then we're no worse off than we are right now. There's no new debt that's under being taken. So
that's another way to look at it, but you saw the assets.
It's no one's on the hook. There's no new debt. It's an attempt to try to generate revenue to avoid having to pay for debt.
What happens
if get you off the hook?
What happens if the money doesn't come in? Like you're projecting for the TIF.
We're in no worse case than we are right now, except for a parcel that we're not using for anything other than parking.
It's not generating revenue.
It's not generating revenue, so there's no new debt, there's no new obligation, there is no hook.
Well, that's different than the Arcadia and the Green then.
And there is an expense in maintaining that lot.
Yes, there's an expense, and we
Because
are using somebody else's money.
We had taxpayers and TIF people and Fannie Mae's and Johnson Printers and stuff
So
like that.
if we don't make an investment, there's no chance of making up the lost time. We're actually doing something.
But you're just talking about that small property. The other ancillary properties are on the tax rate, on the tax rolls right now, right?
Yes.
They'll continue. So they'll continue to be. I just note that even if nothing happens on the property, we sell it to them, it is on the tax rolls, which is now it's not. So they'll be paying at least a minimal amount, so there'll be
So
actually.
there's a component of
Slight benefit, even if nothing happens.
the corner of Maple and Maine, that's owned by the village. The other, are they also owned by the village, the other properties too?
No.
No, that's independent. They're paying taxes. They're in the
Right.
TIF.
And they'll continue to pay taxes.
Right. And the more of that we have, the less likely it is that we'll have to fund the
Okay,
debt.
I just wanted to call that to your attention.
I-
I don't believe in crystal balls.
No, it's more like Magic 8 Ball, it's not a crystal ball. Sometimes the
Thank
answer
you.
is fuzzy, you have to ask again later. But thank you, Mr. Roble, always good to see you. Welcome back.
Well, thank you. John Palifka, 6016 Washington. I certainly believe that $126,525 is certainly a low price. And there's been certain implied promises of staffing, maintenance, just how Trammell Crow would take care of this project. And I think that as part of the ordinance or law, the village could ask that if this project were sold, even before it was started, or within, say, 7 years, that Trammell Crow reimburse the village a certain dollar amount, because they're going to sell it at a profit, to bring this 126 up to a closer level, at least for the improvements it would take to build another parking lot. So let's say 5 years at $500,000. I think that would be fair. They would be probably more than willing to stay here for 5 years and manage the building in the way that they have presented it. And now, I just want to take some of you back a year and a half to when there was a 2-evening discussion on Marquis on Main. And very passionate discussion by a lot of people in this village. And there was many references to the comprehensive plan. And near the end of the last evening of discussion, the residents were told the comprehensive plan is a guide. It's not the law. We don't have to follow it. So I just want to remind you of what we were told, and now we're getting all these references to how important the comprehensive plan is. So, especially for the commissioners that were here before.
Bless you. Sure, I appreciate that, although the comprehensive plan, conformance with the comprehensive plan is built right into the special use requirements. So our ordinance says you have to demonstrate conformance with the comprehensive plan.
Mayor, it's a zoning question, too.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a
Right.
big part of what's going on
There's a
here.
few other things in there, too. Other questions from the audience on G only? Just the redevelopment agreement?
Matt Bott, 615.
Welcome back.
Thank you. I'll admit, I have not read the whole background of this, but just looking at the second bullet point on the handout that was provided, there's a statement that the development shall be completed no later than July 1st, 2018. What are the ramifications of not completing the development by then?
Number one, we don't have a development. Number two,
The village has the option to let that back at no cost and to operate it as a parking lot. Or the option, if it goes on beyond that, within 5 years, then you have the option of repurchasing.
Okay. Okay,
thank you. All right, seeing that there's no other comments, I appreciate everyone sticking it out and asking all your comments, asking all your questions and making all your comments. We certainly appreciate it. As was mentioned, they are absolutely taken into consideration in making a decision. We're making no decision on this tonight. This is a workshop. It will be scheduled for a future vote. I would ask a question to my colleagues. Given the lateness of the hour, we still are supposed to address the 3 proposed stormwater referendum questions. Unfortunately, the one person that raised her hand who actually wanted to talk about it left about an hour ago. I can't blame her. But is this something we want to continue to take up tonight, or is it something? I heard one yes.
It's only 3, we're only 3 hours into this
Simple
meeting.
yes is all you need to hear.
Just continue.
Simple yes is all I need to hear.
We don't need,
I heard yes.
Discussion.
I think Bob was a no.
I was a no.
I'll go either way, it doesn't matter.
Yes.
We should just get it over with.
All right, fair enough.
It's late enough.
Then let's, that's all I needed was a yes. Let's ask Mr. Philman to please introduce items 7A, B, and C.
You may recall that the village council has been dealing with the top priority action item, consider changes to the stormwater utility. The council has directed staff to prepare 3 referendum questions that would appear on this November's ballot. They would be advisory questions designed to get input from the electorate on potential changes to the stormwater utility. The questions were discussed a couple of weeks ago, maybe over a month ago, and they have been simplified to get really right to the heart of the matter. The questions, I will read just one of the 3 questions just so the people in the audience and the council can get a flavor for it. Simple and to the point. Shall the village continue to fund all stormwater costs using a stormwater utility fee instead of property taxes? The next one asks, should it be property taxes instead of a stormwater utility? And the third one asks, should it be a combination? We also added a preamble, as was directed by the council about a month ago, to try to make sure that the people answering these referendum questions have some context about the budget of $3.9 million not in question, and making sure they understand that they're answering a series of 3 questions. So with that, Mayor, I will hand it over to you, and we're happy to respond to questions or further wordsmith these 3 questions in the preamble.
Thank you. I like them. Who's got a comment? Commissioner Olson.
I like the questions. My one comment would be, my suggestion in the preamble, 3rd sentence, these costs are currently funded with a stormwater utility fee. I would strengthen the sentence to say, funded exclusively through a stormwater utility fee. Just to strengthen that, to make it very clear that it's exclusively.
To sort of amplify that a little bit,
Is that necessarily true right now? We started transferring 300,000 that had been on sidewalks, right?
Yes, and there are some other sources.
It's not exactly true that it's exclusively. There are developer contributions that are technically cash in lieu of detention.
Well, primarily then.
Make it primarily.
Will do.
and then I just another very minor quibble. I would prefer the sentence start with currently, comma, these costs are primarily funded with a stormwater utility fee.
Love it.
Other than that,
Currently, comma, these costs are funded primarily with the stormwater utility fee.
Other than that, I'm good with it.
Actually, maybe we could eliminate the primary, I actually like this better. It's less words than currently these costs are funded with the stormwater utility fee.
Oh, yeah, just
It's
take it out
actually
on the-
clear.
We'll undo the change you just made.
For mine's case.
Whether it's exclusively or primarily or whatever, I think actually the movement of currently makes it clearer.
It's an awful lot of
All right, so now we're back to currently, comma, these costs are funded with the stormwater utility fee.
Period. I'm good. I'm glad we didn't postpone the discussion.
I agree with the mayor. I think everything looks fine here. The preamble is direct, the question is direct, gives the necessary information. Let's move forward.
I think these are well written.
I got an issue. Imagine that.
Well,
I would like to not.
if you want to move to table this indefinitely, that's something.
I don't want to move the table indefinitely. It's not what I want to do. But the preamble issue is a little bit dangerous because it has opportunities to clarify, it also has opportunities to muddy. And so it seems to me that an element that's missing, it presents this question, and I know, I suspect I know that these decisions are going to be framed up as, we can always do what we're going to do next year, it's nothing's fixed. But no small part of this, from a resident's standpoint, I would think, would be, what does this mean long-term? Because the issue, for me, part of the issue with the stormwater utility is the magnitude, not today, but the magnitude 15 years from now. And so when we say it's $3.9 million, it's sort of a fixed question that says, do I want to spend $3.9 million? How? But it seems like we should be saying something else, and I know Enz is probably getting hives and want me to stifle, but it's not $3.9 million. It's an ever-increasing cost And so saying that this is an ever-increasing cost is important. If we were to roll forward the plan that previous council and this council have suggested is likely one that from a policy standpoint we would like to continue to pursue, the work level, the service delivery level, that $3.9 million is starting to get pretty small real fast.
Understood. How would you suggest capturing that concept?
In 2017, the village plans to budget $3.9 million for stormwater costs. These costs, which are expected to continually increase at a rate, pick the plan rate, 11%, whatever the plan rate was.
I think you just say they increase.
Okay, well, I just think it's an important aspect of it. It's not a $3.9 million.
Actually, I have a fundamental problem with this line, because measuring the level of stormwater funding is not, to my mind, the purpose of the referendum.
Yeah.
So service levels should not be part of the referendum. It should be the method of paying it, period.
Well, except that the...
I understood it a little bit differently, and correct me if I'm wrong, is I think you were trying to highlight this as an ongoing, this isn't a one-shot deal.
It's not a
We do
question
it one
about
year and that's it.
defining, there was nothing, if that somehow came out as trying to define service levels via referendum, well, let me start again. The issue of how should we pay for it could materially be affected, and reasonably would be materially affected, if people saw it as a fixed amount or something that would be forever increasing.
That's what I understood
That's
you to be
what I was
saying.
trying to
Someone
say.
might
So
read
maybe
it
that's
as
a better-
one-year expenditure.
Not so much 1 year, but just, is it fixed or is it something that continually
Yeah,
increases?
I stand corrected.
That's what I understood.
Yeah, okay.
The suggestion.
That's a good point.
So my wording's probably not great, but that is the point.
I mean, I'd be open to something that would capture that. I don't have it at my fingertips.
I'd say less instead of more than. I'd take out the second sentence. Currently, stormwater costs are funded with stormwater utility fee. Eliminate the second sentence. So that we don't talk about money at all.
Well, that was put in previously because we wanted to give folks a magnitude.
But we gotta
It
get
wasn't an
more.
insignificant expense.
Right, which we need to put a whole lot more in to properly convey the magnitude. We cannot convey the magnitude in one sentence.
Well, I don't think we're going to.
We can't convey it in 2 or 3 sentences, frankly.
Fair enough. I don't think we're going to wordsmith that.
I think what we're doing.
We're not going to wordsmith this on the fly, but.
We're saying simply in 2017, we're going to spend 3.9. Now, you're going to put 3 questions out there. This is a preamble. Your questions say, how are you going to fund it? And this isn't going to be the end of it. This isn't just going to appear on your ballot. There's going to be an education process going on too. So people are going to know that the 2017, well, what, when I read this, I go, gee, why do you have to spend 3.9? Why do we debate that? Well, this is all going to, this is all election day. Prior to that, there's an education process.
What's the harm in just putting after the word fee, these costs are currently funded, I know there was some adjustment there, but funded with a stormwater utility fee, which is expected to increase?
Well, why don't we just say this? Currently, these costs are funded annually with a stormwater utility fee.
Yeah, I like that better,
Yeah,
annually.
we'll just leave it.
And leave
Yeah.
it.
That incorporates the concept of the ongoing, without getting into too much detail.
And I think it's fine to eliminate the sentence about the money.
You take out this, I think removing the second sentence
Except we
addresses
put that
Commissioner
back in
Burnet's
last
concern.
Why don't we
No, I've got a
leave it as
fundamental
is?
problem
I
with
like the
that. People need to
questions
know
as
what
they
we
are.
spend and what kind of tax
Yeah.
increase could be coming, and what kind of fee increases might be coming.
That was put in everyone's direction last time. folks.
Right, but everybody knows there's an increase, everybody knows there's a fee, and everyone's going to be educated, like
But-
Commissioner Waldeck said. We've been through all this discussion. This is what these questions are for.
If we ask people whether or not to have a fee, or whether to put it back on the property tax without telling them the impact of it, that it's right now $4 million, and to Bob's point, that we expect it to go up if we continue to maintain and build capital projects,
Right, now
we're not giving
away
them
from
completed.
I'm
what
going to try
the
to
intent
suggest,
was
I'm
here.
going to try to suggest, because we've already changed the third sentence, that we can pick up Bob's point without going too far. That if it says, as was just modified, currently, comma, these costs are funded annually with a stormwater utility fee, period. That adds 2 words, changes things around, and leave everything else the same. And I heard most everyone was happy with it until we started futzing with it.
Right.
I agree.
I'm fine with what you just said.
What about
No,
one other change?
No, what about? No,
Doesn't capture my
No.
point.
So,
I mean, I understand that I may just lose by math, but it doesn't capture my point.
Well, it captures the point that it's not a static expense.
It's not a
Yeah, but
one-time
it-
I don't think to be
expense.
able to explain the increases, I do think.
But one of the
it's
arguments that
fully-
has been thrown around, and I'll just pick on the last council, that we threw it around for, I think, 3 years, was, we don't really have to increase this, let's just pick a number. And that's a kind of BS. Everybody knows that if we're going to deliver the service levels we all campaign on, we're going to fix stormwater. Stormwater's still a priority for me. It's a really big increasing thing.
But I thought that everyone had decided, or most everyone had decided, primarily had decided, that this was going to focus on the method of
Right.
raising the
Right,
funds, not the
right.
amount or
Let's not get away from
increases,
that.
that was going to be a further
It's about
conversation.
the
The 3 point, the putting the rate in there was important to Greg's point, because people need to understand that if they, let's just say that everybody was a real clear thing, 100% and zero, everybody said, put it on property taxes. People would need to understand that what that means is $3.9 million property tax increase, and a, at least in the moment, commitment to continuing to increase that. It's not true. What?
Well, either we're budgeting that or we're not.
Maybe we should table it.
So one of the things that,
I asked,
No, this is fine.
one of the
Go on,
concepts that we introduced when we had the discussion a month ago, may have been lost because we went over it very briefly, it's when staff looked at other preambles or footnotes at the time we were talking about, is that in an effort to provide more facts to clarify the issue, it actually became counterproductive because hardly any of the statements you want to put in something like this end up being factually true. Because we found a couple about property tax referendums, and by the time the entities tried to explain what is actually true and able to withstand a challenge, ended up being sentence after sentence after sentence that no sort of layperson would actually understand. And that was one of the key points, is that in trying to actually add clarity, by the time you make it defensible, that it almost defeats the purpose. And that was sort of the genesis of trying to provide one quick statement that we knew to be true, $3.9 million.
I would suggest that we go with the modified third sentence and be done with it.
Me too.
Fine with that.
Currently, annual costs are funded with a stormwater utility fee.
Currently, comma, these costs are funded annually with a stormwater utility fee.
Or currently, annual costs are funded with a stormwater utility fee.
That deletes a word.
At least one, maybe two.
Why not say these annual costs? No, I'm going to get into it.
Still.
Delete needless words.
Yes.
If it doesn't have a purpose, strike it out.
Yeah, we'll let the staff
Fine.
look at the word.
I think the actual questions are very good.
I like the question a lot.
I like the questions, let's leave them.
It's all
Chair direction.
preamble.
And that concludes our first reading tonight, Mayor. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much. That brings us to item 8, the mayor's report. Just two quick things which are related. Number one, there are in fact only 2 days left until Downers Grove Grove Fest will be taking place. You've already seen signs of it downtown. It launches for sure on Thursday. Look for the village council booth that will be at Main and Burlington at posted times. There'll be an opportunity for sort of an extended coffee with the council, as one or more members of the village council will be manning that booth throughout the day, again, at scheduled times. So anyone who would like to come down and ask questions or share any comments will have an opportunity to do so throughout, I think, all 3 days of Grove Fest? All 3 days of Grove Fest. So we look forward to seeing everybody out and about, and hope everyone has a wonderful and safe time. That ends my report. That brings us to item 9, the manager's report. Mr. Fieldman.
No report tonight, Mayor.
Very good. Item 10, attorney's report. Ms. Petrarca.
Thank you, Mayor. 4 items to present tonight. The first is an ordinance rezoning certain property located at the northeast corner of Main Street and Maple Avenue. Second is an ordinance authorizing a special use for the northeast corner of Main Street and Maple Avenue to permit a mixed-use retail and multifamily residence building. An ordinance designating the property at northeast corner of Main Street and Maple Avenue is Plan Unit Development number 47 and authorizing construction of a mixed-use retail and multifamily residence building. And finally, an ordinance authorizing a redevelopment and land purchase agreement with Trammell Crow Chicago Development, Inc. All of these items will be on next week's active agenda.
Thank you. That brings us to item 11, council member reports. This is an opportunity for members of the council either share items that are going on in the community that might be of interest to those in attendance, or an opportunity to report out on boards or other bodies that they are liaisons to. Any report tonight, Commissioner Burnett?
I have no report, Mayor.
Thank you. Commissioner White?
No report.
Commissioner Olson?
Two things. One is our, we have the Downers Grove 5-miler, the annual, I think something like the 39th annual Downers Grove 5-miler. It's sponsored by the Park District on Sunday at Lincoln Center at 7:30 a.m. So I'll be running and hope to see many people in the community out there enjoying that. Of course, see people out throughout the weekend at Grove Fest. Wanted to also note that the council will be meeting next Tuesday, Tuesday, June 28th. We've had a lot of work on the agenda, and I know that this month we're going to be meeting for a fourth Tuesday, given the amount of work we've been doing. So looking forward to meeting and seeing everyone here again next week.
Thank you. And on that note, my thanks to my colleagues in the village council as well as staff for adding an extra meeting to the calendar. We do have a lot to do, and I think it makes sense for us to meet and continue with the people's business with all deliberate speed. Commissioner Patimo?
No report.
Thank you. Commissioner Waldeck?
No report.
And Commissioner Jose?
No report.
All right, very good. I have no further report, and with that, I will ask for a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Roll call, please.
Commissioner Olson?
Aye.
Commissioner White?
Aye.
Commissioner Waldeck?
Aye.
Commissioner Patimo?
Aye.
Commissioner Jose?
Aye.
Commissioner Barnett?
Aye.
Mayor Tully?
Aye. We are adjourned. Thank you and good night.